That's a tall order out of the blocks when you're trying to shut down a Croat side like that. It's a very, very, it's a tricky idea trying to figure out what this starting 11 is going to look like for England going up against Croatia. But, everybody sits there and looks at Croatia. They look at Luka Modric. And for me, I want to see what it looks like in the midfield, because I think that as much as we look at the back for England and what it might look like because of injuries and fitness, I think that the battle might just be in the midfield just as much.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they handle that Croatian side. Other games this weekend, everything starts tomorrow with Turkey and Italy. Saturday, Wales and Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, Belgium, Russia. Sunday, England, Croatia in the 9 o'clock, Austria, North Macedonia at noon, and then the Netherlands and Ukraine at 3 o'clock. The Dutch have been a team that a lot of people have been talking about. A lot of people are down on old Frank de Boer. He has a group that, even if they start slow, they should be able to manage that group pretty well and build as the tournament goes on. And look, how many times do we see in, whether it's the Euros, whether it's Copa America, whether it's a World Cup, teams that go a long way often are ones that start not on fire and they build through the tournament. The Dutch have a group where they'll be able to do that. Some teams don't have that luxury. And they're going to play all their games in Amsterdam, by the way, so even better for the Dutch. Group D, England starting out with Croatia, having the emotional match with Scotland, then the Czech Republic. That's not an easy group to navigate. Group F, France, Germany, Portugal. Somebody's not getting out of that group. It could very easily, Germany could play well and go home after the group. Portugal could play well and go home after the group. France could play well and go home after the group. And they're the favorites. A team that should be in the final 8 will go home after group play because of Group F. If Hungary steals anything from anybody, that could end up be what tips that group. Group A, Italy, Switzerland, Turkey, Wales. Feels pretty comfortable for the Italians. Group B, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Russia. Feels comfortable for Belgium to be able to build into this thing. The Dutch group has Austria, North Macedonia, and Ukraine. The Netherlands should be fine there. Group D, we mentioned England, Scotland, Croatia, Czech Republic. Group E, Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden. A little bit tricky in that group for Spain, which most people would look at and say they're going to go through. It's a little tricky because, look, we know Sergio Busquets has tested positive. He's going to be out, but they're not going to drop him from the squad. They're going to expect him to recover. He's critical for them. Marcos Llorente tested positive. Now he has had a negative test. They think it's a false positive. He has to test negative again before he can rejoin the group, but it's looking better than people thought. They do have their satellite group of people training before that squad becomes final, that if they've got to make any changes, they can. If they get Busquets back somewhat early, they don't lose Llorente, they can manage this. But Spain is one that I think is flying under the radar for a lot of people. What are the numbers on Spain to win this thing?
All right, so Spain to win outright was one of those 8-1s. In the group itself, to win the group, they're listed at 1-3. They are the favorite, according to Bet365, to win the group.
Yeah, they should be.
Then you're looking at qualifications and things like that. The rest of the group to win the group. Poland at 11-2 to win the group. 5.5-1. Sweden 6-1 to win the group. Slovakia 14-1 to win the group. So they're looking at so juice box purveyors are looking at Spain as the prohibitive favorite to win Group E.
Yeah, I mean they are. Like, that's not a surprise.
No, and so Spain, Spain in the overall, once again, they're part of that 8-1 group to win the whole thing outright.
Nick Khalifi is very happy this morning because tomorrow at the opening Euro 2020 ceremony, it's at the Stadio Olimpico, ahead of Italy and Turkey. Andrea Bocelli will sing Nessun Dorma at the opening ceremony. Nick says Italy by 1,000. It's very possible. Very, very possible. That is a very nice. There he is in the Twitch pitch. That is a very, very nice opening for the Euros in Rome tomorrow. Who is your potential surprise, John? Who could not win the thing as a surprise, but who is somebody that we'll be talking about? Like, we talked about Iceland in 2016, and nobody saw that one coming. Who is that team that could be the shock for everybody?
Ooh, I've got two.
Okay.
I've got Croatia at 33-1.
I mean, I'm sorry, but the last World Cup finalist, are they really a surprise if they make noise in the next Euros?
Hey, I'm looking at that 33-1 number more than anything.
Yeah, I don't care about a 33-1 number. Again, it's about getting action. Like, they were a World Cup finalist.
Then the other one for me is Ukraine out of Group C.
Okay, why?
You look at Ukraine, and for me, the squad traditionally for Ukraine has been together for a very, very long time. Experienced group, and with everything, at the back, when you have a keeper like Piatov, who has been in every single competition known to mankind involving the Ukraine basically since about 1692. I think that when you've got that kind of a spine that starts with Piatov, I think that last time I checked, if you don't give up any goals, that at least gets you draws leading forward, and I think that you can make things a little bit more difficult for everybody else. And it's a side that has a lot of folks from the Dynamo Kiev team that are playing together, so you have that continuity. You're not looking at guys coming from a bunch of different teams and squads and locations. And I think that having Piatov between the sticks and a lot of Dynamo Kiev folks who were the Ukraine Premier League champs last year, I think that kind of continuity will help out, and I think that they could gum up the works a little bit.
Look, they're not going to win the thing, but I'm going to buy into a trivia question that was posted on the Twitch pitch earlier this week. Get the 8 betting favorites out of the way.
Okay.
The team that has the most players in Europe's Big 5 leagues. You take the top 8 out of the way.
Okay.
The team that's left in the tournament that has the most players in Europe's Big 5 leagues, and we know it's the Premier League, it's the Bundesliga, it's La Liga, it's Serie A, it's Liga.
Okay.
Tied for 5th, it's Croatia and Turkey with 12. Ukraine's nowhere on this list, by the way. They don't really rate the Ukrainian Premier League. Wales is 4th. Denmark is 3rd. Switzerland, one that nobody's mentioned in the Twitch pitch, is 2nd. I will go with Austria as a team that we could be talking about in this tournament. We know David Alaba, what he brings to the table. The guy that I'm looking at is Marcel Sabitzer. RB Leipzig, he's been talked about with a big move. How many times do you see that guy come into a tournament who's talked about with that big jump, and they play lights out to get that big move? Sabitzer is the one that I'm looking at. Austria could be a team that we are surprised by the end of this. Are they going to win it? No, they shouldn't. Can they make that surprise run? Because you always see somebody in that final 8 who's not a favorite. Sometimes you see that somebody in the final 4 who's not a favorite. Austria could be a very interesting one to follow. I'll be looking at them pretty closely. And again, they're in a group that, it could come down to Austria and the Ukraine to get into that next round. They're in a manageable group. They can grow into this tournament a little bit. Now, their schedule and that group schedule, Austria starts with North Macedonia. The Dutch start with Ukraine. That's on the weekend. Those are both on Sunday. Match day 2, Austria and the Netherlands play in Amsterdam Thursday, June 17th at 3 o'clock. Ukraine and North Macedonia will be our watch-along game on Thursday at 9 o'clock. And then match day 3, it's between the two of them, and it could very well be the game that decides who goes through. Netherlands plays North Macedonia. So Monday, June 21st, it is Ukraine and Austria, and that could be who goes through, and that could be who ends up potentially being in place to pull a surprise. Now, third place teams will go through as well. It's one of those 24 team tournaments where the top 2 go through and then 4 of the third place teams go through. So both could end up going through here, but Austria and the Ukraine, both in the same group as teams to surprise, could be interesting. Burns got Switzerland on that list as a possibility, along with Ukraine, says Austria is a maybe. Poland is what Will has. Obviously, Robert Lewandowski is going to be a guy who gives them a puncher's chance. GH has got Turkey on the list. Domer's got the Danes. J-Dub said there's no respect for Croatia. I think Croatia is not a shock if they do well here. I don't really put them in that situation. Burns says Austria has good center backs, good midfield, striker a bit young. They got a shot. If the striker comes good in this, and Sabitzer's the one that I'm looking at, I think he's going to be playing for a big move. I think he's been linked enough. He's going to be playing for that big move, and he will be in form. He's going to be critical. ESPN's got the must-see games listed. June 13th, Croatia at England. That's going to be a big one to start things off. Also, Ukraine at the Netherlands. Again, it's at Amsterdam. June 15th, France at Germany. In Munich at the Allianz. That group's going to get decided by those kinds of games. You got Portugal in that mix as well, but France at Germany. The favorites have to go on the road to Germany. This format is really drunk, by the way, of the Euros this year, with going all over the map.
Beautiful.
Oh, there's Jarrett. It's beautiful, huh?
Hey, it's beautiful.
You think it's beautiful? Who is your team that could be the Iceland of 2021?
I don't really have one.
Come
I'll
on.
have to think on it.
Scotland? Or are you just going to say Scotland by default?
200 to 1.
Probably. Because they can absolutely do that. Oregon has a defense. We're gonna defend, and we're gonna pop your ass on a counter or a set piece. It's a really tempting shout to go that direction.
Well, they could be.
It feels so easy. It feels like a cop out. So I'm trying to think of something other than that.
Well, John went with Ukraine, so I mean, that's not a shock from John. I went with Austria. J-Dub says, who are the fighting somebody? Who's gonna be a team that's just gonna scrap their way through the tournament? Scotland could absolutely be the fighting Scotlands, fighting Scots.
Yeah, they could. Because there is absolutely this whole. It's been 23 years thing, and we have no interest in playing only 270 minutes energy about it. Because you don't know if they're going to make the World Cup. This kind of might be their run at saying, hey, we don't know about a World Cup right now. We're here right now, so we need to make the best of what we got.
Other must-see games in the tournament, the France at Germany in Munich on June 15th. June 16th, Switzerland at Italy. June 17th, Belgium at Denmark. June 17th, Austria at the Netherlands. June 18th, next Friday, 3 o'clock, Scotland at England.
Wembley.
June 19, Portugal at Germany. That is the one thing about Group F to keep in mind. Germany gets the games at home, and that could end up tipping it a little bit. June 23, Sweden plays Poland, and France plays Portugal. And that could be who decides who goes through in that one. What I'm curious about in Group F, because we mentioned some third place teams will go through, 4 out of 6. Is it a concern about Group F, because it's got France and Germany and Portugal, Hungary's along for the ride, that they beat each other up enough to where the third place team actually doesn't go through in that group? You know, you look at it, you're like, oh, well, yeah, they'll be good enough to go through. But if it's a very tight group and a low-scoring group and a lot of draws, they could end up eliminating the third-place team out of that stacked group. I'm really curious to see if that's how it plays out.
I feel bad for Hungary for getting.
Who did they piss off?
I don't know, because they got thrown to a damn lion. It's like next time Hungary makes a Euros, you owe it to put them in a group with man, I don't know, give me 3 of the lowest ranked teams in Europe and give them that. I was going to say North Macedonia, but they just beat Germany, so that doesn't really fly.
That's true. Will says the over-under for the Scotland-England match is 5.5. Number of stabbings, not goals.
There you go. I was about to say goals. That's hard. Oh, sorry, stabbings. Yeah, that's fair. Number of cleat marks found in Harry Kane's leg.
Yeah, very possible.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I am also with Johannes. Can I get a hallelujah that Greece is not playing? Yes.
Or Iceland.
Yes, Iceland would be on that list for me. What are the odds, Jarrett, that England-Scotland finishes 11-11?
Oh.
I'm going to say better than you think. I'm going to call that one blindly as a really tempting bet that's not going to pay off.
Okay, I'll give you one.
Because I feel like that. Go ahead.
The over-under, you got to pick the over-under here on the number of fouls in the match, and I'm going to set the number at 32.
Under, but not by a lot.
I'll take the over, but here you want a comparison for this one, Jason?
Mm-hmm.
What if I told you this game was kind of like the Colombia-England game from the World Cup, where you get the right official managing it, and he doesn't throw cards left and right, and he manages it correctly, and they just beat the dog out of each other, but it's not finishing 9-on-8.
Yeah, I could see that, but I do think there'll be a lot of fouls in it. 32 is 16 apiece, which is on the high side. It's not obscene.
That's a loose city match.
Well, yeah. Don't tell their fans that, though. They'll get upset. They'll get very upset about that. Be careful.
Getting cooked by a 16-year-old left back, and that's not my problem.
There's that, too. Most of the experts over at ESPN have France to win, which I totally understand. They are the favorite. Again, Arsene Wenger said they're the super favorite.
Super favorite.
Gabriel Marcotti goes with Belgium. And this is what he says. Windows closing for the golden generation. We have seen this in the Euros. He says the Euro history is filled with guys who didn't play much or perform during the season, only to excel for 4 weeks in the summer. He's looking at Eden Hazard and Axel Witsel. Which, I don't know about that. But can Belgium win this thing, Jarrett?
I mean, that's kind of my dark horse pick, if you want to call it a dark horse. I guess it's not really
it's
a dark
not really.
horse. But...
Yeah, it's not. They're in the, what are they,
France
fifth favorite?
Third
favorite, John? Belgium?
Yeah, they are third favorite, 11-2.
Yeah.
Behind France and England, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I would like to see Belgium get one last crack with this golden generation because, yeah, it's when it ends, I don't know what Belgium has behind it. It's probably not going to be as talented as what they've had for the last 8 years, though. And then to have nothing to show for it. It'd be cool if Belgium makes a nice little run here, but I just kind of I want to see how the bracket falls out and how the knockout rounds fall, and then we're going to find out Belgium has to go through a buzzsaw just to get to a final. Good try, Belgium.
Does Roberto Martinez ride off into the sunset after whatever happens with Belgium this summer to Tottenham or to Everton?
Oh, my God.
I mean, I don't think he's back at Belgium.
No.
I don't know. It's so weird.
Gone with 2 years until the next World Cup?
Yeah, see, that's what's weird. Is normally I could see him absolutely leaving and going to do a club job. But the way the musical chairs has worked out, Sean Vergara is freaking out about Roberto Martinez coming to Tottenham. The way things have worked out with the Euros being pushed back a year, it's only 18 months till the World Cup. Maybe he waits it out there because, yeah, those are the jobs that are left. You know, it's not like it was even a couple weeks ago where it's like, oh, well, maybe Roberto Martinez goes to Germany. Maybe he goes to a top team in Italy. Maybe he gets into the mix in Madrid. Like, none of that's there anymore. It's Tottenham, it's Everton. Sorry, Tottenham and Everton fans, but if you're Roberto Martinez and you would have maybe thought about turning in your paperwork and handing over your badge, and now it's like, you know what? I'll go 18 more months and see what's available then. After the World Cup, which will be in the winter, how many times do you see a big team make a big move in the middle of the season? And this one's going to be even different because there will be that extended World Cup break. He could walk right out of the World Cup into a big club going into 2023 to finish out that season. That would be wild.
Yeah.
I think he waits. I think he should wait, but we'll have to see. Okay,
it's
Jared.
a weird spot for Belgium.
Yeah, it is.
18 months to put a new coach in is...
Yeah.
But with the talent they have, you know, Zinedine Zidane's not taking Belgium, but I don't know what Belgium's financial situation is, but hey, you want to get crazy? Let's say Roberto Martinez gets swayed by Everton's cash, and he goes to Everton, he walks out. If you're Belgium and you got money to spend, Antonio Conte on an 18-month deal to go into a World Cup, don't hate it.
Mm-mm.
Don't hate it.
Nick just flew through the roof somewhere.
Probably, but hey, I mean, that's a team. If you're Antonio Conte and you're sitting out there and you decided not to go to Spurs,
oh my God,
and
that's a dream.
You're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I got 18 months. I'd be then he could be in that position to take over a team mid-season or going into 23-24. You could go to the World Cup, walk into a team that could win it. Yeah. That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting possibility. You mentioned the bracket, Jared. I wanted to dig into this really quick. So the way the bracket is laid out, we're going to leave the possibilities of the third place team to the side a little bit because it's a little tricky to figure that out, obviously. Group A, Italy, who is the favorite to go there. Italy should win Group A. They would play the runner-up of Group C, which could be one of John or I's underdogs to watch, Austria or Ukraine. Could be the Netherlands if they fall into that. That's not exactly easy for Italy that they could be facing. Group B's winner, which should be Belgium, they would get a third-place team in the round of 16, but then it could easily set up, if we go chalk, with Belgium and Italy in the quarterfinals in Munich.
Yeah.
Oof. The winner of the group of death, Group F, will play a third-place team. So they should be fine, whoever that is, out of France or Germany or Portugal. They will then, the winner of Group F, if they get through round of 16, which they should, they get a weird one. It's the runners-up of Group D and E that play in the other side of that bracket. So Group D is the Croatia, England, Scotland, Czech Republic group.
Yeah.
So England should win the group. Let's say it's Croatia second, Group D. Against the runner-up of Group E, which could be Sweden, which could be Poland, which could be Slovakia, could be Spain if they slip. So you could see a situation with whoever wins Group F, which could be France, should be France probably, although Germany gets all the games at home, playing a Croatia, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly a Poland and Lewandowski.
Yeah.
Group E.
Hell, imagine Germany finishes third, and some poor Slav has to. We get the third place team. Who do we have? You have Germany.
Well, that's the one that's tricky because of the way the third place teams could go. They could go into as a third place team from Group F. They could go into play the winner of Group B, which could be Belgium. I mean, it could be Belgium possibly against a Germany or a France or a Portugal in a round of 16. That could happen. Or they could go into the game against Group C, which could be the Netherlands. So they could go into a situation where it's a Germany or a Portugal or a France against the Netherlands in a round of 16. Group E, the winner of that group, that's the Poland, Slovakia, Spain, Sweden group, they play a third-place team. Then they, if things go to chalk, will play the winner of Group D, which should be England. So you could have an England-Spain quarterfinal in Rome, which would be interesting. The winner of Group C gets a third-place team. That should be the Netherlands. Then they would play another one of the runner-up battles, Group A and B. So if the Dutch win the group, as you would expect, they could play the winner of a Turkey-Denmark game. The path for the Dutch, if they win the group, which they should. I know everybody's got the knives out for Frank de Boer, as always. If they win the group, it's very manageable for them to get to a semifinal, in my opinion. The way the bracket stacks, it could be really tough in some of these other sections. Although, like I said, the Netherlands could get a third-place team from Group F, which is not what they want to see. Nobody wants that third-place team from Group F. The bracket, as we say in these tournaments all the time, Jarrett, the bracket and the way things fall, you do need some luck to get a good run through and to avoid complete chaos in your draw. You have to get a little bit of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the sickening humor of like Belgium and their last great run with this golden generation. They won their group. Oh yeah, Germany or Portugal or France is waiting for you in round 2. They're bruised, but they have a baseball bat with way too many nails sticking out of it, and they're waiting for you. And it's a really tough draw to have to deal with. And then, like, let's say you get through that, and you got someone like Italy waiting for you after that. That's just cruel. That's the way it goes. Like, it's just kind of how it can go in these situations, man. You get a good draw, and I think we talk about it sometimes in the moment, and then we forget about it, and then we bring it back up right now as the tournament's about to start, of getting that right draw of, so-and-so made a semifinal run. Yeah, go look who they played. Like, somebody can have just a cakewalk or a really good matchup for them to make that run. And we'll talk about it now. We'll watch it happen, and then we'll forget about like the structure and the conditions of that run until we get to the next tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And again, our shows for a little while will be /watch-alongs/ normal SDH shows starting on Monday when Scotland is playing at 9 o'clock, and Jarrett will just be screaming into his microphone.
Well, I mean, that's a huge game.
Yeah, no, it is. It's massive.
Scotland needs to win that game, and they need to win that game by multiple goals, because if they want to be, let's assume it's chalk in that group the rest of the way, England and Croatia taking 1 and 2. Let's say Scotland finishes third in that group. They're going to need as many points and as many goals as possible to make that happen. So they need to get out early and just keep punching until you're just hitting wet cement.
So your schedule for those 9 o'clock games, we'll get Scotland and the Czech Republic on Monday. No 9 o'clock game on Tuesday. Wednesday, we will get Finland and Russia. Okay. Thursday, we'll get Ukraine and North Macedonia.
Oh, God.
Friday, we'll get Sweden and Slovakia. That is next week's schedule. And then, actually, it's just going to be next week, because then after that, it's noon and 3s. So next week will be a soccer over there, watch along for most days. And some of these games are maybe not the most appealing, but they could get interesting. They could be fun. Depending on how things go with weekend watch along, stay tuned. We'll try to squeeze those in, and things will happen. Yes, J-Dub, there will be lots of, in Scotland today, there'll be lots of that on the Sounders on Monday for sure. Tons and tons of that.
Hopefully in a good way.
Hopefully in a good way. Fingers crossed. I need to know from you, Jarrett, is it in a good way that we hear the news out of Scotland this morning with your team, Celtic, getting the manager that maybe was their second choice but they get it done, and you guys are back in business.
In Scotland,
I do appreciate
today,
the passive aggressive your team made my morning.
I thought they were your team. What's passive
They
aggressive
are,
about that?
just
I thought that was accurate.
The punishment of the last year was pretty aggressive.
Your team.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
No, I mean it's an accurate statement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so is the tone after the last year. It's okay.
No, I had to watch some of it because of you, Jarrett. So yes, I'm still angry about having to watch some of those games.
So am I.
Yeah.
I gave them money for the right to watch those games.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I wasn't that crazy.
Nope.
But I'm okay with this. You're bringing in somebody who is been successful at places he has been, both on the club and national level. He's talked about wanting to play an aggressive style and to get forward, get into the attack, and maybe we won't play like it's 1987 anymore. That'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And at this point, like, you're bringing in somebody who has something to prove in Europe. I think he could view this as if things go really well, he could make that jump to the mainland or south, depending on what kind of things open up, where this might be the kind of person, Celtic, you need to go get guys like this, like a manager from a different part of the world who's looking to break into Europe, might not be getting the looks from the big leagues and the big countries down on the mainland, but go get these guys, bring them in, let them prove what they can do, and then if they make the jump, so be it. By the way, you also have a number of those guys in Scotland that you could probably find. And let them build up. You're doing it with talent. Do it with coaches too. But I'm good with this on that grounds of you brought in a guy who wants to make a mark. He's going to hopefully be everything you wanted him to be in terms of building it. It's a 12-month rolling contract, and part of me is hesitant to put a lot of expectation on year one just because that roster is going to have a lot of turnover. You have two guys in Ryan Christie and Callum McGregor who are both probably looking for moves south, and the Euros will be huge for them to secure those moves. There's going to be some roster turnover here. Alton Edwards going to leave too. I don't really know what to expect for next year, so if next year doesn't go perfectly, I'm not going to be mad at him. Like, you have to be patient with it.
You might be the only one.
Yeah, you might be the only one.
That's fine.
This is the reaction when the news became final this morning.
Some breaking news to bring in. You can see it at the bottom of your screen there. And Celtic have finally got their man. It's Ange Postecoglou, the Greek-Australian coach that they have appointed as their manager. Definitely a bit of a punt. No sort of record in European football at all. They released a lengthy statement, Celtic, where they said that he joins from Yokohama F. Marinos in Japan, where he delivered the title there. They list his CV in charge of Australia, won the Asian Cup as well. But they call him a modern, progressive coach with exciting attacking football as his philosophy. And he's received a host of prestigious coaching accolades, including being named as Australia's Manager of the Decade in 2015. He'll be meeting up with the Celtic squad, I should say, at Lennoxtown, and will lead the team to the club's pre-season training camp. But definitely a bit of a punt for Celtic, appointing a man with not much of a track record, not much of a pedigree, but it might just well work out for them.
That's from the BBC, Jarrett. A bit of a punt.
Wow.
What do you think?
What else did you want him to do? Did you want him to go get, like, Alan Pardew?
Mark Hughes.
Don't even, Jarrett.
Big
You should know
Sam.
better than that.
Well, I'm asking, like, what do they want him to do? Go get, like, an English retread?
I don't know. Maybe they did. Like, maybe that is what they wanted. Alan Pardew.
I'd rather them get weird and try something.
Yeah, no,
And I'm okay with this.
That's absolutely accurate. Won back-to-back A-League titles with Brisbane Roar, spent a season with Melbourne Victory, became manager of Australia in 2013, went to the World Cup with them in 2014, earned qualification for the 2018 World Cup, but left in 2017 to move to Japan, won the J-League with Yokohama in 2019. It is a big rebuild. So that's what's interesting about it for me is it's a rebuild, but it's a team that is never expected to finish below second. I don't think that'll happen this year, but if it's ever going to happen, this feels like the year that it could if they go into a true big rebuild. But here's the thing that jumped out to me, Jarrett, and this is why I'm kind of about it. Celtic says they've hired him, Postecoglou, on a 12-month rolling contract. What? They can't even commit more than a year to this guy. That's not a good look.
That's like a tire kicking. That's all that sounds like. By giving him a 12-month deal,
That
it's like
feels
if
like
we
a
like
punt.
if we like you, you can stay. If we don't, then you're gone. There's no. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't seem, Jarrett, like there's any faith in any kind of development here. They don't. It's like they don't have the patience to want him to build.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that, which is
That's odd.
I know. I'm hoping he gets the patience to see what happens. Just because, like I said, it's such a weird situation in the fact that you're going to have to replace guys left and right on this team. Your captain has moved on and is now wearing red. And I'm still not used to it. I'm working on it. It's just you're losing at least one striker. Don't really know what's going on with Lee Griffiths, but you're losing a chunk of your midfield. You're going to lose one of your center backs in Christoph Ayer. There's a lot of turnover, and you're handing this dude a club that's kind of broken, and then the pieces that are good are going to be going, and you're going to hand him a squad that needs to be rebuilt and give him 12 months to say, hey, fix it and win them. I need you to fix it right now over this one summer during the Euros. Win a title against a team that made the round of 16 in Europa League last year. Go do it now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think you have to be patient.
Byrne says, isn't the first thing they should have done hiring a competent sporting director?
We don't do that here.
I don't like that sort of thing. Jason Nick says, where's the Celtic legends to come and save them? Get those coaching CVs.
Well, Neil Lennon was a Celtic legend.
Yeah, true.
Your most recent Celtic legend is taking on a player-coach role, Patadri now. So that's going to take a while.
Yep, that is true.
Don't rush him.
That is true. Frank Lampard has a job this summer, Jarrett. Frank Lampard has a job this summer. This is a big deal.
Oh.
He's got a
where
job.
is
He is going to be a pundit for the BBC.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yep.
That's okay. Good for him.
Yep. He's going to get some work.
Get that check.
Yeah, hey, I mean, you're not doing anything else for the
bread
summer.
on the table.
Yeah. You know, Jose Mourinho had signed up a deal with TalkSport like almost immediately after he was fired. Then he got the Roma gig. We'll get into Tottenham and Jose and Roma and the definite musical chairs that could be going on there here in a second. I do want to touch on this interview that Antonio Conte did because it kind of leads us into the Spurs thing. He did an interview. Let me make sure I get the right outlet here that he did it with. I believe it was, La Gazzetta dello Sport. So he had some things to say about Inter, and he had some things to say about Tottenham. So he just won the title, walked away from Inter. The president of Inter, Steven Zhang, said that our different points of view on that situation led us to the separation. I'm talking about the economic situation. He said what was not fundamental for him was for the club and vice versa. Conte is a top coach, but as a president, I have to think of the solidity of this club. Conte says, what I can say is that my project never changed, but it would be nonsense to discuss this now. I don't want to create controversy or talk about transfers. I respect Zhang and thank him for choosing me. I love Inter, the club, and their fans. I wish Simone Inzaghi the best of luck because he's a very talented and ambitious coach. I wish all the best to the Nerazzurri. Former Inter president Moratti was critical of Conte, said that he lacked emotional attachment to the club and also the desire for a challenge. Conte said, I can't deny his words left me embittered and disappointed. Moratti is smart and classy and represents the history of Inter along with his family. However, we spoke on the phone and he apologized because those words did not reflect his real thoughts. Whoever knows me is aware of the strong bond I have for every team I coach. I give everything everywhere I go. Somebody leaves tired teams and players who have given all. I always leave young and improved players and united groups with a winning mentality. Now, this is where he started to kind of hint at what was up with Tottenham, how that didn't happen. He wanted to make it clear that he's never been obsessed by money. He said, the market sets the price. I would have stayed where I was in the past. I would have accepted compromises and obtained new contracts. I look for the projects instead, and I am ready to stay at home if something is not convincing me. It has to do with vision, honesty, and principles. He didn't get specific about Tottenham. He said, generally, I like the challenges, and I've accepted many of them during my career. Even the top clubs I coached were never the favorites when I arrived. However, if there's something that doesn't convince me, I prefer not to accept, regardless of the money. That might set some alarm bells off in London. Maybe. Because, look, I mean, maybe is he protesting a little too much about the money thing? Yeah, he might be. But he's making it pretty clear without saying it that he was not convinced by what Tottenham was telling him. Like, I'm good. I'll stay at home. I don't want to do that. I'm okay. Now Tottenham apparently is going to go with Paulo Fonseca, who was at Roma. So yes, what could happen here is Roma fires Fonseca, and we've talked about how Fonseca fell out with the squad, and it looked like he was going to be fired for quite a while. He finally got fired. They hired Jose Mourinho almost immediately, who had been fired by Spurs. So basically, Roma and Tottenham might swap coaches.
Yeah.
Is that a bad look for Spurs?
Yeah.
It's not a good look for Roma either, but I feel like for some reason it's worse for Spurs.
Because they're the second one to act. Because I think if they were the first in this group to do this, it might look worse for Roma. But it's because you're waiting and then you make the decision and then you're just getting the guy from there as opposed to being the first one to jump in the pool. You're the second one who's sitting there and you're waiting it out a little bit and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, then we'll get Fonseca and whatever. Because you were second, I think that's why this looks worse.
So, John, you were bigging up the Ukrainian league earlier. Fonseca spent 3 years at Shakhtar.
Yep.
He's also been at Porto and Braga before Roma. 3 successive doubles in charge of Shakhtar between 2016 and 2019. But you were kind of down on him when we were talking about it before.
Well, it's just that the way that things were structured in the league financially, Shakhtar far and away, it was Shakhtar and Dynamo Kiev. And you did basically what you were supposed to do. You beat all the lesser teams. You got enough points against the top competition. You knocked off Dynamo Kiev in Cup. So basically, it's almost like a Ligue 1 situation before this year involving PSG. You did your job. And it was dominance in some of those years, and then it was a little closer than others. But the way that the Ukrainian Premier League was structured when Fonseca was there, it was literally Shakhtar, then there was some space, then it was Kiev, then there was more space, and everybody else. And so, it's like Fonseca was given the resources to be successful. He did the job, he got it done, and then he ends up going to Roma.
Well, but what else was he supposed to do? Because you were, and this is what I'm trying to understand, because I didn't watch Shakhtar a lot at that time.
Yeah.
He did what he was supposed to do. What else was he supposed to do? Because you didn't seem to rate him. And that's what I want to know. Like Nick Alifi says, Fonseca lost to the top 4-6 teams, won against the mid-table and the bottom feeders. So, again, kind of doing what I guess he was supposed to do at Roma. Because I don't know if Roma was legitimately a top 4 team. Maybe you could argue about, are they 5, are they 6, are they 7? But it feels like, from what you're saying, from what Nick's saying, is he's a good manager, but he doesn't necessarily elevate a team further. Are you disappointed in what Shakhtar did in Europe, for example?
I'm trying to remember the group stages when he was there. I think that if memory serves, they were put in groups where it would have been difficult to advance.
So he basically did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not bad.
No, but as Nick is reinforcing with his time in Serie A, it's,
But he did what he was supposed to do there too. That's what I'm trying to get to, because Paulo Fonseca is not a bad coach.
No.
I don't think it's a bad hire, but he's generally at the places he's been, he's done what they should have done. The question, I think, for me goes back to what Conte said. Tottenham coming into this year in England, they're not supposed to be the top 4. I mean, the top 3 is Manchester City, it's Liverpool, it's Chelsea. Far and away, those are the 3 best teams. They should be 1, 2, and 3 in whatever order you want to put them in. I think Manchester United is a fairly solid 4-5. Leicester will be in that mix, or at least they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Tottenham is 6 at best. And that's with a lot of questions at the moment.
Yeah.
So you're hiring somebody who has been with teams in the Ukraine where they were the number 1 team and they won like they were supposed to. And in Italy, they were the 5, 6, 7, and they finished 5, 6, 7. Like, if Tottenham's not going to give him more to work with, then he's going to do what he generally does. I think. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's somebody who has failed with teams.
No.
That's what's interesting. And Nick says, so he kept them roughly at level. It's viewed as a disappointment in Rome. I get that. That's a Rome thing. But, if Tottenham's expecting him to come in and elevate it, again, I go back to what Conte said. And this is the number 1 takeaway for me about what's going on with Tottenham. If there's something that doesn't convince me, I prefer not to accept, regardless of the money. He was not convinced and said, you know what, I'm just going to stay at home. And now they're going to go get somebody who's a competent, solid, does the job, does what he's supposed to do. Can he elevate them further? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he's very good, but I don't know if they're going to have the materials to be elevated further.
Right.
They feel like a Europa League team at best next year based on talent. I don't think he'll blow it. I don't think he'll put him in the trash, but
no,
I don't think he's going to have the talent to go any further.
No, and this goes back to the previous point that we've been discussing, Jarrett, about keeping Harry Kane and keeping Heung-min Son. And if someone like Fonseca is going to keep them at level, why not take those resources, sell them, get things back so you can build and then have the opportunity to improve with the resources that you bring in from the money that you would get from the sale of one, if not both of those guys.
Jarrett's trying to find a mute button.
Yes.
I don't know if he's the guy to do that. And we haven't really seen him in that situation. So I don't know if he's the guy to build something new. He feels like the guy that you hire if you're going to keep Harry Kane and keep Son and keep the group together. He's the safe choice.
Yeah.
If you're going to go and build something and give that person money to do it, somebody like Maurizio Sarri would have been that hire. And it sounds like they tried to get somebody like Jesse Marsh, and they've talked to different people that would have been more builders. I don't think Fonseca is a builder necessarily, although I don't know how many times he's been in that situation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that Fonseca is, for lack of a better word, a maintainer. He's as Nick says, he keeps you where you were. He may not necessarily make you better, but he won't make you worse. You'll stay right where you've been. And I think that if you bring in Fonseca, I think that you're looking at that Europa League, Europa Championship qualifying thing where you are right now. I mean, it's just, he doesn't jump off the page to me as someone that can get you to 4th or 3rd or something like that. I think he keeps you where you are.
All right, while Jarrett's working the mute button, John, you got to tell us about our good friend over in Decatur, Steve Apolinsky.
Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, one place that you need to go, and it's Apolinsky & Associates, LLC. 3 different ways that you can do it. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com. You can pick up the phone, 404-377-9191, and get a free consultation, or you can go on the World Wide Web, large device or small. Type in aa-legal.com in the address bar. Hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whatever advances you to your homepage. for Apolinski and Associates LLC, and you can look at all the different cases they can handle for you, all the different awards that they have won in their over 30 years of experience, garnering over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. So Eastern and Central time zones represented by Apolinski and Associates LLC for their clients. And if you still have questions from all the investigating that you might have done through the homepage and all the links that you can click to go deeper into the website, there's a pop-up window that will have popped up, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. You can get your questions answered that way if you still have them. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia, it is Apolinski and Associates LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
About normal with your timing.
Okay.
About normal. We are going to have some changes to our formatting starting next week, so stay tuned for that. John will be doing reads. Don't you worry. John will be doing reads. We'll make him have to do those things, but they might be a little more impromptu at times, which could be entertaining, could be disastrous, could be a little bit of both, depending on the day. Alex Pacine has put a lot of consideration into this, and he has given it a 10.
Thank you, Alex.
A lot of consideration there. Lots and lots of consideration.
As he always does.
Of course. Of course. We will get to some of the news here in just a bit, because there's quite a few different things that we'll touch on. Abby got on just in time for the .com, so gives a 10.
Thank you, Abby.
-1 for the Central Time Zone talk from J-Dub. Average. Also, does John get rated on his ATL UTD2 promos? You can. Feel free to.
Yes,
tweet him
absolutely.
in. Like Sean Vergara tweeted him in.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen.
Sean Vergara was right there.
6 out of 10 for Coco. Stumbled over the time zone line. Pacing was a little low today. Domer, thank you for changing the first letter of that.
Thank you, Domer.
Because John got in trouble last time. He had to pay a fine to the cookie jar.
Mm-hmm.
A 10 from Domer. 8.9 because of yesterday's read from Sean. That was from the game. 5 out of 10. Tommy wasn't paying attention. I like you, Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, 5 out of 10 feels right. 8.5 from Brad. Timing seemed good. We have not talked much about the game yet from last night. Abby, we can do that. We do have Niko Moreno joining us at 10:30. Sean, -5 for sticking and stay, though. Yeah, that's your thing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
That and my outline of play it safe, everybody. We'll see you next time. That has been my outline for about 75 years.
That's a long time.
Yep.
4 out of 10. Mazzano, great read, solid timing, but since John wants variety, 4 out of 10.
Thank you, Mazzano.
Okay, a couple of things that should get this. First one, update from Diego Montalvan, who covers South American soccer for Telemundo Sports, also for Peru Waltz. 3 judges have already voted on Copa America taking place in Brazil, and this is a virtual vote, and I love that this is all coming out now. 2 judges are in favor. 1 has asked for, quote, a comprehensive and detailed plan to ensure the safety of the tournament, unquote. The tournament starts in 3 days.
Yeah.
How comprehensive and detailed is this going to be?
Yeah, getting a continuance to get an up-to-date plan is a little time-constrained.
Yes, they are waiting on more votes. That's 3. The president of the Supreme Federal Court of Brazil has asked for this session today to debate the suspension of the tournament that's set to start on Sunday. Yeah, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Also, while we are ringing the alarm, the Telegraph in England is reporting that Tottenham and Everton, who do not have managers, are in the hunt to sign Diego Rossi of LAFC.
Oh.
That's a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't see that one coming this morning. LAFC is in one of the most unique spots in MLS right now because you've got Brian Rodriguez coming back after Almeria did not get promoted. So the automatic transfer doesn't happen. They might have tried to find a way out of the automatic transfer because he only started 5 games for them. It didn't go all that well. They put a file on his permanent record, they said.
Voiced displeasure.
Yeah, well, he did.
He did.
There are lots of different things going on with Brian Rodriguez at Almeria, so he's coming back into one of the designated player spots. Carlos Vela reportedly is in the last year of his deal. Don't know if they're going to sign him to a new deal. Diego Rossi, we thought he would go by now. He hasn't. Now you've got a rumor for Tottenham and Everton being interested in him. It does feel like an interesting move, Coco. I'm not 100% convinced of it. I don't know. That's a weird one to me. I didn't see that coming. He'd been linked to Italian clubs generally before this, but the money is not necessarily there in Italy right now. Tottenham and Everton will have money to spend, but does he fit? I don't know. I'm not promising on it. Not all that excited about that one. I don't think it works well.
And would the coaches that would take over in those two positions...
Well, we don't know who they're going to be yet.
Yeah. Would they, if Rossi beats them to the door, are these coaches that would be coming in after an alleged Diego Rossi transaction, would they be keen on having Diego Rossi as a part of the equation?
Well, they're not going to have that decision. That's not really how it works. I mean, if somebody brings him in, they're going to say to whoever they hire, yeah, we just dropped 10, 15, probably in that ballpark. I don't know if it goes higher than that. We just dropped 10, 15 million on this player. Yeah, you're going to need to consider him. So that's how things work in the big boy land here. Coco says the worst that would happen is you get loaned out to one of those Italian clubs after bringing him in, then get him loaned out. Shooter's disappointed. He says he wants Leeds to get in the mix. He says, we aren't in the mix for anyone. What kind of decision did I make? Shooter, what you got to understand about a Bielsa team is they're not linked to players just to be linked to players. He looks for specific kinds of players. They don't just get linked to whoever the hot, flavor of the month is. That's not how Leeds will be. It will be very specific kinds of guys that they will look for. And a lot of times it's not the big names because the big names aren't going to be able to come in and play the way that he wants. So don't freak out. You're okay, Shooter. It's all good. Yeah. It's not about big names at Leeds with Bielsa. I don't know. Rossi to Everton or Spurs, I'm just not buying that he would be playing all that much.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't necessarily like that move. No. Okay, other stuff on the board today. Last night, if you did not get a chance to watch Atlanta United 2 and Sporting Kansas City 2, the 2's review is up from the booth last night. Good fight from the 2's, heavy legs from the 2's, some mistakes, some positive play. I think the work in general was very good. I don't think it was as sharp as it needed to beat a team like Sporting Kansas City too. Musha Galusa, their left winger, had a couple of really nice goals. But the fight was outstanding from the 2's, and Coleman Gannon found the equalizer. A lot of goals in a very short period of time. Go back and watch the second half especially. First half felt like a little bit of a... Atlanta couldn't find the space to operate in. Sporting Kansas City 2 looked better in the counter and when they were able to get out. First half was cagey. Second half was entertaining, had some caginess, had some fight, had goals in it. Second half, 45 minutes, absolutely worth your time to watch. Absolutely worth your time to watch. Sean, he says we could use that on the first team. Are you talking about the fight? Because I think the first team's got the fight. I disagree with that. Sean says he wants to see more Mejia, and I do too. I think he's really grown up a lot in the last year. Specifically about Mejia. Okay, Sean, that makes more sense. He's not ready for the first team yet. Don't rush him because, watching him last year, he felt like a academy player playing against grown men. This year, he feels like a young man playing against grown men. There's a big jump for him. He feels like a young professional now. Yeah. And last year, he felt like a kid. Some of that, I think, is just he's grown into his body a little bit more, and I think his body's grown a little bit more as well. He's developing quick, so you want to let him play through that. I like that he came on and he made an impact. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing for a young player to always be able to do, but he came on, he was direct, he was running at people, he created things, he made an impact on the game when he came on. I loved David Mejia's game last night. I thought he was a huge factor in getting that result that was needed. I think the twos in general did look tired, which is to be expected. They played on Sunday and they turned around and played again on Wednesday. But to get 2 results, to get 4 points out of those 2, yes, it's at home. You want to get 6. But to get 4, to not lose either one, you'll take that if you're Jack Collison, who's still getting to know this group, getting to know the ins and outs, getting to know who he can count on. I thought his subs were impactful last night, and that's what you're looking for out of the manager in that situation. Do the subs change the game? His did.
4 goals in 13 minutes. The 4 goals in the match happened in one window from 61 to 74. Mushagalusa scores in the 61st. Then Bradley Camden-Feo crashes on a set piece off a corner. Gets there at pretty much the same time as the Sporting Kansas City 2 keeper. Had a little bit more height that was attached to him and got it into the net. And then it was like a minute or so later that Mushagalusa, with great individual effort, works his way around. Josh Bauer puts it past Alec Can to make it 2-1. And you mentioned the subs. I mean, it was 5 minutes later where, when we talked about it on Tuesday's review, where the 3 subs, Will Riley, Coleman Gannon, David Mejia, they combine to get that equalizer at 2-2. And you thought that for that final 15 minutes, because the game was where it was, strategically, that there was going to be another goal that was going to be there. Watch the last 45 minutes. It was great work by both sides. But, the fight was there for Atlanta United too last night to get another point. 2-2-1 on this 5-game homestand. So great work by them in the Central Division. 1 point behind Birmingham now, who's in the top spot right now after having won 3 of their last 4. So a little bit of time to breathe for the twos a little bit and for Jack Collison to get acquainted with the guys. Question on Twitter from USMNT Mode Activated. Was this the best performance by Efren Morales that he's had with the twos? Silky smooth on the ball, great first touch to space, decisive long balls, tough defending. Still looks like he has trouble finding the game as much as I'd like, but he looked sharp and had an impact.
Yeah, it was. He's another one who I think patience is definitely needed because he has grown a lot in the last couple of years. And I think he's had some injuries along with that, which is typical. That's not anything to freak out about, but it is something that you have to keep in mind here. He's not 90 minutes ready right now. He went maybe a little bit further than I thought he could last night. He got into the 60th minute. But he's a player who, because of his growth spurt, you look at him and you're like, oh, center back. Immediately, like, center back. He's a center back. Tony Annan told us that he sees him as a 6. And he's played as a 6 this year. He hasn't played as a center back. He played in his limited time last year. He played as a center back. He's played as a 6. He has the technique to play as a 6. He's got the range to play as a 6. Occasionally, you do see defensive midfielders who are that size. I mean, you think of a guy like Marouane Fellaini. Like, he could be that. He is good enough to do it. And in the way that Atlanta wants to play, and think big picture about not tactics between Tata Martino, Frank de Boer, Gabriel Heinze, Stephen Glass, Tony Annan, Scott Donnelly. Don't get hung up on the individual tactics game to game. But what have we seen consistently from all of the Atlanta United teams? And if you've seen the academy teams, it's the same thing. A number 6 who can play on the ball, can drop into the back line and become a center back. Not just in the possession phase, which I think at times really, there's people who try to explain this and they confuse fans, and it drives me insane. When the holding midfielder drops in between the center backs in possession. They're not playing as a center back. They're dropping in possession. This is where formations and positions gets so overrated. He is a defensive midfielder right now. But what he gives you is the ability to do that, to drop in beyond the ball between the two center backs, help build play out. But he also gives you what we've seen from Santiago Sosa this year, where Santiago Sosa, against two forwards, has become a center back because he's had to sit and defend. You become a center back when you defend from that position, not because you drop in and you're on the ball. Morales gives you the ability to do both and is absolutely the body type more of a center back than Santi is. Santi makes up for it with the way he plays. But yeah, if you look at that as if Santi Sosa is a little bit of the prototype in the way he plays of what you want out of this position in the long term, Sosa's more comfortable being a center back than Carlos Carmona was, for example. Jeff Larentowicz was a player who could be the 6 and a center back interchangeably depending on the situation. Sosa is that. Morales can be that as well. Efrain Morales could be that prototype going forward of a defensive midfielder who can step forward and join the attack when the play calls for that, but can be a center back when the play calls for that and defend as a center back. Give him time, because I honestly think he might still be growing. I think he's also still growing into his body, and that's going to bring some injuries along with it. But yeah, I thought last night was the best we've seen from him. Still at times a little over-exuberant, makes some reckless challenges. Got to be careful with that. But yeah, Efrain Morales, I think, showed last night, maybe for the first time with the twos, why Manchester United brought him in for training and why they really liked him and said a lot of positive things about him, and why Atlanta United signed him to a pro deal at a very young age. Efrain Morales has that potential. It's never a guarantee that it all comes together, but he has that potential right now at his age, and we're starting to see it come through.
Listed on in our notes, we get heights and weights. Right now, listed at 6'3", 170. If he's still growing, he could be 6'4", 6'5", 190 by the time that he fills out. And when you've got someone that can be that much of a force back there that can give you multiple things, then that's definitely something to keep an eye on here. But yeah, as you said, I think he's still growing into his body. I still think that there's probably 10 or 15 pounds that'll get added of muscle. And then, all of the growth that goes with it. And I think that you're seeing an evolution of Efrain Morales here. And you're seeing that this season with the twos, with him coming in as a midfielder. The
patience is critical, though, for these kinds of guys like Wiley, Morales. We've had it in the past, although they're a little bit older now, like Riley and Gannon. Mejia is another one in this group where they're young, they're still developing physically. That's going to bring about times where it's hard for them to play 90 minutes back-to-back, time for them to play 90 minutes, in a couple of weeks, stuff like that is a challenge. And there has to be that patience. When they're out of a lineup, when they do get time off, or they come off the bench, it doesn't mean that something went wrong. It means that you're managing them physically a lot of times. Morales is somebody that I hope physically is able to play more and kind of work through some of the things that he is working through as a player on the field. Because, man, the potential is really bright. It's really exciting to see him play like he did last night and what he could be as a holding midfielder. That size, that good defensively that he can be as a center back, but also what he can do on the ball. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what he can be. Some other things before we get into it with Niko Moreno in about 10 minutes. USA beat Costa Rica last night on the men's side 4-0. The women play tonight in a friendly. Ronald Gonzalez was let go from the Costa Rican national team after the game. That was all but planned. We had talked about it earlier in the week. Ignacio Ambriz, who was formerly with Club Leon, is linked to be the next manager for Costa Rica. The president of the Costa Rican Federation announced after the match that the search for a new coach would start. Again, Ambriz has already been linked to this job. It wasn't just because of the 4-0 loss last night. It's not like the U.S. beat them and they're like, oh, yeah, we're firing the coach because the U.S. won 4-0. I think that's being overplayed a little bit this morning. It was a weird game just because it's after the Nations League semis and third place game for Costa Rica and semis and final for the U.S. The U.S. looked good. They played guys who we hadn't seen, Brendan Aronson, Daryl Dike. I continue to say it. I think Brendan Aronson is a player that is becoming one that has to be on the field for the U.S. I love what Gio Reyna brings to the table. I love what Christian Pulisic brings to the table. I'm not saying Aronson starts over them, but I think it might be time for Greg Berhalter to figure out how to get that setup of Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Brendan Aronson as a midfield trio with Pulisic and Reyna wide. And then your number 9. I think Aronson is getting hard to leave off of the field. And I'd love to see what he can do in a more consistent set of playing time and playing with that group. I love what Brendan Aronson brings to the table. He's grown a lot in his time at Philadelphia and now going over to Red Bull Salzburg. We talked about it yesterday. The format of this thing, 3 games in 7 days, it was set up to be like the World Cup qualifying coming up this fall. You wanted to get them into this situation where 4 of the 5 windows coming up for World Cup qualifying will be 3 games in 7 days. Absolutely critical to be able to do this and get the results like they did in these games. You know, you're not going to have extra time, so in these 3 games, if you want to put it in a World Cup qualifying format, win, draw, win, you're in great shape. You're in great shape. So this is good, and I think what Berhalter said afterwards is really important. What I realized is that it's going to take a group to get this done. It's not going to take 11 starters. We need the whole group, and we showed that today and throughout the 3 games. Everyone except David Ochoa got on the field, and that's what's going to be needed in World Cup qualifying. If they take a group of 26, 28, 30 guys for 3 games, almost all of them are going to play, and it's going to be critical. Coco, I think he's starting to. Coco says he's yet to figure out the best way to use players that aren't his top 3 or 4 guys. I think he's starting to. Aronson, I don't think he's misusing him. I just think Aronson is developing so fast that he's put himself into a position where he's got to be on the field. And I want to see how Berhalter manages that. I think he can. I think Berhalter can really set the team up to play in a 4-2-3-1, and you call it a 4-3-3, do whatever you want with it. But with a midfield trio of Adams, McKennie, and Aronson, and maybe that means McKennie has to pick his spots to go forward. That's okay. Aronson's going to have to defend a little bit more. That's okay. If it's 2 8s with Aronson and McKennie, and they both have to come back, fine. If it is 2 holding and Aronson as more of a free number 10, fine. Pulisic and Reyna are going to be wide players who like to come inside and combine. That works too. That can work. I think that can absolutely work. Aronson can drift out wide. Reyna can come inside. It can be very interchangeable and very fluid with that group. And I think that could be the best choice in a must-win game for the U.S. I think Brendan Aronson has staked his claim to more playing time.
Yeah, Tafka agrees with you. He says he's been so impressive, and that's in all caps with multiple O's. He wants to find a way to get him on the field with the other A squad members sometimes. And also, he wants to see if there's a way to let Pulisic have the freedom to play in a combination of roles, a striker to get in behind and a false 9 coming back to help in the build-up.
But this is what we talk about all the time. To play in a combination of roles, that's just soccer. That's the thing, is Berhalter's not, far off of Heinze, Guardiola, all of them. Tuchel is interchangeable. All the top coaches have interchangeability as a big part of what they do. You have to be able to play in a combination of roles. Pulisic can get in behind. There's nothing preventing him in the way that the U.S. plays from him getting in behind. Berhalter's not telling him not to. It's where the game takes you. And modern teams play in a non-rigid way. And the U.S. is getting there. It's harder for national teams because they don't train as much. So, with a club team, you play, you're in training, you're doing activities to kind of promote that interchangeability. You're working on patterns of play, things that we're seeing with the twos, things we're seeing with the first team here in Atlanta, that you can tell they're working through certain things for certain games. Sometimes it was setting Brooks Lennon up 1v1 to put in crosses. It was working down the left to do that. Last night, Atlanta United 2 did a lot of that. It was finding McFadden on the end of things rather than building up down the right. He had half as many touches as Wiley and the center backs did, because it was get him on the end of it. Don't build up through that side, because Wiley likes to hang back a little bit more. Okay, cool. You find those patterns in a club situation. A national team, it is a little bit more by feel. But Berhalter is creating that same platform. And he'll have some opportunities in games and video sessions, not really in training sessions, to say, hey, Christian, if the run is on to get in behind, get in behind. And when that happens, hey, Brendan, slide over to make sure we're covered on the break. McKennie, slide up. You know, whoever the forward is, drop back a little bit. He'll be able to point out, like, on the ball, you're not a right winger. You're a soccer player. Off the ball, yes, you're going to have to make the movement when your team's in possession to open things up, but defensively is where structure comes into play more. And again, if you want to compare it to what we watched last night with Atlanta United 2, they were very structured in the way they pressed. The reason they were able to do that was because, and I know people hate it, and I know it drives people crazy, is because they were patient quite often in possession. They built up properly, they were well organized, they were well structured to be able to press. Structure comes defensively, not in the attack. So if it's on for Pulisic to get in behind, Berhalter's not going to keep him from doing it. It's then he makes that run. Where does the adjustment come? So no, Tafka. I mean, I'm using your point to dig into it a little bit deeper. He says that comment was made with Pulisic up top, which we haven't tried yet, and getting Aronson on the wing. Again, I don't think it really matters. You know, if you put Pulisic up top and you put Aronson on the wing, then who is the other central midfielder when you're talking about positioning from a lineup perspective? But yeah, I mean, you could do that too. That's going to change your grouping of players, and I don't know if it makes it better, to be honest. But that's a different conversation than positioning and getting in behind. If you play Pulisic there, you're going to lose some of the things that you get from a more traditional number 9, like a Sargent, like a DK, like a Zardes, those kinds of players, like a Pifak. I think you're more fluid with Pulisic out wide and doing what we were saying about Aronson in a midfield trio with Pulisic and Reina out wide. I think then Pulisic can do the things that Tafka you're mentioning you want him to do, but from a different position. If he's the 9, I don't know if it works as well. I think then it takes away a lot of the ability to play long if you have to against certain teams. There's teams where it could work, but I don't know if that makes it better, because then you're adding who into the team to make it fit. And then I think you're going to need more patient possession to create those opportunities for Pulisic to get in behind.
He's got Musa as a part of his midfield.
I haven't seen enough from Musa to take that risk yet. Musa, just because he plays at Valencia, doesn't mean that he should be slotted into that group yet. Like, Aronson is ahead of Musa for me. I know they're different players, but I want Aronson on the field. I think they need to structure things to get him on the field. Musa, I need to see more. But it's nice to have these conversations, isn't it? It's nice to have these options that you can make these kinds of changes to make it work. But I beg of people, when looking at this U.S. team now, don't think about it like it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. The less rigid in the attack, the better. The more fluid, and creating a lineup and a grouping that allows for fluidity, the better. If it's somebody as a non-traditional number 9 and that makes the group flow better, fine, great. If you need a number 9 as that focal point and everything to run around it, that's fine too. Berhalter's going to have to play with the pieces and see what fits best, but fluidity is going to be the key for the way this team wants to play. It's going to be essential. All right, let's get Niko Moreno on the line. We'll talk to Niko about the U.S. We'll talk to him about Mexico. We'll talk to him about CONCACAF. We'll get updated on what's going on down in South America and keep you posted on any other judges' votes that come to the fore. Lots of different things going on in this hemisphere right now in the soccer world, and we'll get into it with Niko Moreno over his cup of, I don't think it's a cafecito. I think it's just cafe. What's up, Niko? How are you?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Yes, right here. With definitely not cafecito, just because of the size of it.
That's what I thought. Thought you needed the large cup.
But yes, Definitely. One of the interesting things about being Colombian is that when I went back to Colombia a couple of years ago, after I think 15 years of not going, I forgot how smaller the cups that they give you in Colombia are. Of course, the coffee is more concentrated, but I'm trying to hold this thing and sip it as little as I can, trying to make it last, because here in America, we get these huge cups of coffee. It's not the same in Colombia.
We were talking about the.
So are you the kind of guy that will, if you were to go home, do you sit there and you pack your suitcase with coffee to bring with, or do you have folks back in Colombia that can mail it to you so you can replenish your stash? How do you do that?
No, I definitely stash some in my bag. I go to a couple of my favorite places down in Colombia, and I try to get as much as I can. I think I'm down to my very last bag of Colombian coffee. There is a store here in Seattle that is bringing a lot of Colombian product, and they do have Café Águila Roja, which I grew up with. So I do like to go down there and pay the convenience tax for that Colombian coffee. I mean, you're talking a good $18 for a very small bag.
That's the good
of
stuff.
Coffee.
Wow.
But but yes, I do get taxed that way.
That's the good stuff. I'm assuming, because a lot of people did. John and I have John, I think, is in. What's your reaction to coffee, John?
Brown flavorless water.
Wow,
basically,
that was
I've
just
never
mean.
been a fan.
I thought your reaction was generally like ew.
It is generally ew, no matter what has been put in it, and it doesn't matter what. I'm just ew. That's why I stick to my morning soda.
I apologize, Nico. I am not.
Ouch.
I know.
No
seriously.
comment on that.
Yeah, just leave that one alone.
You're still my favorite crew. Don't worry about it. I'm going to ignore the comment.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. I'm not a huge coffee fan, but I will occasionally partake. I generally go with like an energy drink because I need even more of a kick. We needed that all on Monday morning after the craziness with the CONCACAF Nations League final. I felt like what this final, the semifinals were fine, but the final especially, I feel like it put this trophy, this tournament kind of on the map. And I was really happy with CONCACAF Nations League in general for what it did for the smaller countries and giving those smaller countries some competitive games and the whole idea of moving up the ladder with Nations League. You know, we've seen it in Europe. Now we see it in CONCACAF. But this final gave you that showcase. And did it change anything to you about either the importance of the tournament or the hierarchy of CONCACAF? Is the U.S. on the same level as Mexico now because of one result?
I wouldn't go as far as saying that they haven't necessarily been in the past. I mean, when you look at the results, and I've always partaken in this thought process. The United States, it's always been very young compared to other countries in their soccer process. And Mexico has not gone any farther than the United States have gone World Cup wise. You know, it's not like Mexico has been a finalist or semi-finalist. So I feel like they've always been very close. And when it's come to these types of cups, whether it's Gold Cup or CONCACAF qualifiers, I feel like the U.S. and Mexico level has always been very close. What this does is that it provides a certain level of those people who think that the U.S. is the little brother of Mexico. It takes that away. That perception to all those doubters that perhaps continue to look at the United States like these Yanks that don't know soccer. Now that's gone. There is a new era of soccer. This is the golden era of soccer for the United States. Every country has it. You know, there's always that one team that you can go back and look and say, man, this is the golden era of soccer of this country. This is it for the United States. The ability of these European players, because they all play in European clubs, for them to be able to get a win like this is key and is important. So I think it does. I've always thought they're very close in level, but I think this takes away the doubters and puts a real result, a real title to the name of the United States. That's very important. So it's a huge cornerstone for U.S. soccer in general to get a cup of this magnitude. And in terms of the cup and the tournament, the Nations League, I love it. I think it's important for CONCACAF to continue to progress because they are and have always been 3 steps behind CONMEBOL or so. So this really helps the region in general get better. And when we're looking into a future World Cup that will have a lot more teams and a lot more spots for each conference, this helps that process, their development in general. So I think it's an important cup and a huge win for United States soccer.
Well, and at the same time, Niko, I guess bits and pieces as to how this played out, where you had those CONCACAF moments that we always refer to when we say that something gets all CONCACAF-y. You get past 90, then you get past the 90 minutes and then just the chaos that happened after. And then I think that when you have the United States negotiate that aspect of it too, because there'd be times in the past, regardless of where the venue was, if they were on the road or what have you, where you might not have the United States react the way that they did. And for them to come out the other side with all the chaos that was going on around them, for them to keep their heads and get the win, I think that it's important on a couple of different levels here.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely correct on that. I mean, when we were going into this game, what I saw was a very talented team for the United States, but a very young one. And CONCACAF is played differently. There's a lot of physical play. There's a lot of, I don't know how you call it, a certain level of
histrionics.
Yes, exactly. Yes, or gimmicks, or just there's antics that happen throughout the game that you gotta kind of go through. And I thought they did that well for a very young club, right? A very young team in general, a national team that has a lot to prove, and they did it. I mean, they proved it. Even losing their starting keeper, and Hover comes in and he ends up getting a game-saving save in that penalty kick. So it was huge for this team, and it wasn't easy. I mean, you saw what Alanis did when he came into the game and completely put Reem on skates and gets that goal for Mexico. You're thinking it's over, and yet the United States is able to come back and tie the game. Pulisic shushes the entire Mexico crowd, and everything that happened. So I just feel like you need this confidence booster for a very young team that's talented, but needs that cohesiveness and that ability to grow together. So, Ben, I think it was huge. And you're going to go back 5-10 years from now and look at this game and say that was the moment where the U.S. really took that big step to being, maybe number one in CONCACAF. Because, like I said, the level's always been there. It's just that Mexico has always gotten the results over on the United States. And that doesn't always talk about the talent level or the soccer level. Just sometimes a national team has the ability to just beat down another national team, and it becomes a normal. And now that's over. That streak is over. The United States was able to get a final on Mexico, and it's huge. It was big time.
Where do you think the rest of CONCACAF stands? I've had this conversation with some people, and you look at South America, and the top teams get tested frequently. I mean, Brazil, Argentina, obviously I think there's a little bit of a cut above, but they have tough matches on the road almost every time, whether it's a qualifier or in a Copa America situation. For CONCACAF, U.S. and Mexico have been the top two big dogs. Costa Rica is in a little bit of a down period at the moment, and they'll be looking for a new manager now. It looks like Ignacio Ambriz will be taking over that job. But do Mexico and the United States get tested enough by the rest of CONCACAF? And if they don't, does there need to be a situation where they play more competitive games against one another, or find them somehow in the world to be able to compete better at the World Cup level?
Well, Jason, look, this is a conversation that is a big topic in Latin America, and is something that is not 1 year old, or it's been talked about 2 years or 3 years ago. I mean, this has been talked about for a while. because Mexico has always been the big dog in CONCACAF, and they've always had this ability to just get to the World Cup with a lot of ease. In certain levels, I mean, they've struggled in qualifiers, but at the end of the day, you always know Mexico's going to be there. The U.S. now has put themselves in that position to, hey, you just expect the United States to get there. But the region in general does struggle, and there isn't much competition today, especially for either one of these national teams. You're talking about a Honduras team that is very old, and you don't really see that newcomers or that ability to really replenish that old version of Honduras. Costa Rica is a very, I don't want to say a team that lacks talent, but it's just a team that perhaps you don't see a lot of potential. Their ceiling is very low.
Yeah, they feel a generation away. Like Costa Rica, it feels like when you look at their key guys, like, you know, we saw Alajuelense and CONCACAF Champions League here in Atlanta, for example, and they've got a bunch of young guys coming through that are very, very good, but then still there's a lot of reliance for them and for the national team on somebody like Brian Ruiz, who is an amazing player, but he's not where he was. Like, they feel like the young kids are good and the old guys are still key and the middle group is non-existent.
And you could say the same thing about Joel Campbell, who's only 28, but you've been waiting for him to break out, when you thought that he was going to be this great player, and he was in Europe and he was going to just kill it, and just has never really broken. At 28, you're not going to break it. I mean, it's over. What you've done, unfortunately. So, and you're still kind of leaning back on him to be your goal scorer, and that's why that Mexico game was not very exciting. And instead of going to the PKs credit to them to take Mexico to that, point of penalty kicks, but it wasn't exciting. And that's why I believe that their ceiling is very low. Panama is in a very similar boat. They're trying to figure out what new players are coming in. There's a little bit of talent, but they just don't have that hierarchy. They don't have that powerful nation of soccer. So it does struggle. And there is no way around it, guys. There's no way to fix it other than maybe them being visitors or guests in Copa Americas and other, tournaments around the world. But they've talked about, maybe the United States and Mexico should go and do the qualifiers in South America. And look, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They are not going to put themselves in the position to go and potentially miss a World Cup because they're trying to, have better competition. Come on, guys. It's just not going to happen. It's not good for business. So it's just honestly, they're going to continue to have to build this region. And I feel like there is progress. These Nation Cups could be one thing. The fact that there's going to be more teams involved in the next World Cup, not Qatar, but, the one after that, United States obviously hosting. So in that sense, perhaps there's going to be small steps taken to better this region. But when you talk about El Salvador, Nicaragua, these teams are just non-existent, unfortunately. So there's just not a lot of competition.
So then what would you do? I mean, I know that, Mexico has been a guest in the past to tournaments in South America and stuff. But for those countries that are trying to develop the game, you're Grand Exalted Poobah of soccer for a day. You're the man in charge. How would you help foster growth for those countries that are developing nations that you'd like to see to continue to grow and perhaps succeed on larger levels? What would you do to make something like that happen?
I would start with the domestic leagues. A lot of these places don't have a real competitive domestic league, and therefore whatever young talent that they can develop has no pathway to getting better, getting high level of competition, or eventually branching out into another league, right? So right now you got, Panamanians, Costa Ricans playing in MLS. That's a good step for them because there is a certain level of play in all those leagues, right? You just mentioned Alajuelense and, even Roman Torres right now is playing in Costa Rica, but, Guatemala, El Salvador, you got to go help those domestic leagues be more relevant. So money has to go into that, putting money into academies and soccer fields, and making sure that all these crooked politicians don't put it all in their dirty pockets. That's what you need to do. You need to have a better ability to give those countries resources so they can build from inside out and start in their domestic leagues and start with their academies and continue to get more talent out there.
Yeah, it feels like the moves CONCACAF has made since they started to get rid of some of those crooked politicians. I'm sure there's still quite a few hanging around. But the CONCACAF League and giving those Central American teams and the Caribbean teams have their series that then feeds into the CONCACAF League. But those competitions give more meaningful games to those teams that are around the same level rather than consistently going in and being overmatched against Mexican teams or even MLS teams now. I think that's something that maybe American soccer media needs to come to grips with is, it's not an automatic MLS team underdog versus Saprissa or Alajuelense anymore. Like, good teams, they're going to test you, but the difference is in budget. It's way beyond what it used to be. So now CONCACAF is playing the long game. They're getting those teams playing each other more. It's good competition with your Saprissas, Alajuelenses, Motaguas, Maratons, getting those teams playing against each other, getting tested. Those young players are getting those games. It's good. CONCACAF Nations League does the same thing in a way where it's, instead of Belize, for example, going in and being the fourth team in a group of the U.S. and Honduras and Jamaica, where Belize has no chance, they're playing meaningful games against teams at their level, and they're going to improve, and they're going to be able to rise and fall based off of that. That's still going to take – it's the right move, and I think it's where CONCACAF's at right now. I do like what they're doing, and I like that they're doing it on the women's side as well. But that's going to take time. That's not a one-cycle process. That's like a 20, 30-year process to elevate the level. I do want to see how, outside of just what we're seeing with the U.S. especially, more players going to play in Europe and playing, the growth of MLS, I want to see how the U.S. and Mexico navigate that competition to be able to compete at the World Cup level and what they do outside of that. Do they try to have more friendlies? But I don't think that really serves it either with these big teams around the world, because the pressure is on, in my opinion. In Mexico, we know it is for the getting to Game 5. For the U.S., the pressure is getting back into the World Cup, and then it will be to compete, and especially for 26. How is it for both of those teams to be in a position to where they can make a run to the quarterfinals and beyond when they're going to host a bunch of games? I don't know, outside of just continuing to produce more players and getting them to Europe and playing at as high a level as possible. It might just be a longer process for CONCACAF. I don't know. It's fascinating to go big picture on this stuff sometimes. And, I know, Niko, you've been able to see this with South American player development and South American national team development as well, and you follow both. Where do you feel like the U.S. stands now? Are you, after the debacle of 2018, are you, optimistic about where the U.S. is? Are you concerned? What are your concerns, if you have them, about where things are with soccer in this country and where the national team is?
No, I'm very optimistic. I would say that the United States can very easily, with their process and current infrastructure and this camada or group of talented young stars, their ceiling is higher than Mexico even, and they could very well put themselves very close to a lot of teams in CONMEBOL. And I'm saying this very seriously. I mean, the way that the United States right now is so rapidly putting young players in European teams, which is key to just getting development of those players, the ability to create an identity, to really mold these players. MLS as a domestic league does a way better job than Mexico or a lot of other countries in making sure that the homegrown players get a lot of play time, that a lot of these guys that are coming out of academies aren't just sitting down watching a whole bunch of foreigners or players that come in from other countries get their play time. So I think that they do that so well that they're just a step ahead. Their growth and their potential could be very close to a lot of nations in South America, and I think that they can match up with just about anybody. I mean, this is the team that, like I just said, guys, they've won a big time game against a known national team that has a group that's been working together for a very long time. I mean, a lot of these players have been in the national team for years, and the United States were able to do it with a whole bunch of young kids. So I just think that at this point in time, whether it's Berhalter or the next coach, and their ability to just keep this group together, guys, it's going to be huge. I mean, look, I don't want to sound, sensationalist here, or I don't want to throw like these hot takes that maybe will get me, like, oh, this guy's crazy. But Spain had a group of players that they've been playing where they were very young, and they ended up molding up together. They played, they knew each other, and they ended up winning a World Cup and a European league, and that Spain team was fantastic. I see this U.S. soccer team, and I see potential to do such things, right? Their ability to just grow together and continue to have that cohesiveness, just bring titles. So obviously at a different level, not the European level, but you're going to win in CONCACAFs, you're going to win Gold Cups, and see how far you can get in a World Cup. So I just think the potential for the United States is huge right now, guys. When you look at this team and you look at the Pulisic and the Gio Reynas and the Zach Steffens and just all this McKennie, I mean, all these young talent, man, I'm impressed. I am very impressed with this team, guys. And they showed everything against this team where Mexico got ahead early. Mackenzie makes a mistake. You're down in the second minute, and they're able to just keep it together. I mean, man, it's huge. It's huge. I'm very optimistic about where U.S. soccer is going at the national team level, in the domestic league, and beyond.
Let me go a step further, Niko, because this is interesting to me, because I've rarely heard of the USMNT talked about in this way, and I don't know if they really have been in this position before. In this hemisphere, and we'll include South America for a minute, Brazil, obviously, ridiculous amount of talent. Argentina, ridiculous amount of talent. We'll put them to the side. Mm-hmm. The U.S. is, in my opinion, when you look at what you just said, a young group that you've got players playing in some of the biggest clubs in the world, a group that can grow together. I mean, you look at some of the key players from this Gold Cup roster. Sargent's been in the Bundesliga, 21. Weah was on the Liga Champs in Lille, 21. Musa's in La Liga at 18. Pulisic is with the Champions League winners at 22. Gio Reyna's in the Bundesliga at 18 with Dortmund. Aronson is now in the Austrian Bundesliga at 20. Weston McKennie, Serie A at 22. Tyler Adams in the Bundesliga with a top team at Leipzig at 22. Reggie Cannon's in Portugal at 22. Zach Steffen is with the English champions at 26, young for a goalkeeper. Like, you compare that to, again, we'll leave Argentina and Brazil to the side. We'll leave Mexico to the other side for a second. You compare that to Colombia, Uruguay, Ecuador, Paraguay, everybody in South America. Mm-hmm. The U.S. is either at that level or beyond it with where players are playing and the level of young talent they have coming through. This is a special generation that we've never seen in this country before.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. That's what people, I think, are having a hard time seeing, or at least those doubters and those haters who, like I said, continue to believe that this is that old U.S. national team that's just going to kick the ball forward and just going to out physical. This is a talented team. They're tactical. They're playing in European leagues. You're right. I mean, the United States right now has more players abroad than Ecuador, than Peru, than Venezuela, not than Colombia, because we have a pretty good team when it comes to that. And that's because we've been known to just put out great talent, right? But now the United States is in the exact same boat, right? I mean, they're putting out guys, like you said, at 18, at 22. That's what Colombia's been doing for a very long time. James Rodriguez was out playing in Portugal when he was, 20, right? So that's exactly what it is. And that's what's so impressive about the United States. And that's exactly, Jason, you put it perfectly, why I do believe that the potential is so high and why they're so way ahead of their own conference in CONCACAF and why they could very well be at the level of a lot of South American teams.
Okay, since you mentioned South America, Niko, let me go there for a next question. How crazy much more crazy-er do you think the Copa America situation can get? Because we're now looking at Supreme Court justices in Brazil who have either voted or want more information about a plan to make things secure for a tournament that's going to start in 3 days. How much more crazy is this thing going to get?
Man, this has been bad from the beginning. And I've literally done my best to just completely pull out of it, because initially when it was going to happen in Colombia, I knew that it was not going to happen in Colombia. There was no way that people would allow this to play in Colombia. I think I've told you guys, if I'm not mistaken, but I was in several shows where I was like, look, this is just not going to happen, right? Then are they going to do it in the United States? That seemed like the most reasonable thing to do if it was going to happen, right? And then I started talking to my contacts in CONMEBOL, and they're like, nope, it's not going to happen. They're not going to take a tournament that is originally from South America to go play it in the United States, where the U.S. is not even part of this tournament. So it makes no sense at all. So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense to a certain extent. I saw a lot of pride. I saw a lot of annoyance from my contacts in CONMEBOL when it came to the tournament being played here. So now, guys, I don't know how much crazier it can get, but I would not be surprised if this just doesn't happen at all. Brazil has already, the players are already talking about not playing. There's been rumors about Chile already saying that their players don't want to play. Argentina says that they will play. So there's just so much commotion, guys, that I haven't seen a worse put together plan since Colombia hosted back in 2002, I believe, where a lot of teams didn't want to go to Colombia because of the violence and the issues that were happening at that time. And a lot of nations pulled out. A lot of teams sent their B teams. And although Colombia ends up winning that Copa America, there is a certain asterisk on top of our title in that Copa America because of those issues. So if it does play, I would see a similar situation where maybe you get C teams or B teams or whatever you want to put going, and a lot of players they just don't want to go. They deny their ability to go. So it's just, the crazier you can get is just that it doesn't happen at all, or that you see a lot of nations just pulling out of the tournament, and it just becomes a frantic and honestly intolerable tournament because of that issue.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, as we're talking right now, another, or at least a report of another judge, I think there's 11 on the Brazilian Supreme Court. Another judge has voted in favor of doing the tournament, which again is set to start on Sunday. But another one is looking for that safety plan on how this is going to go. Also, Ecuador has announced their roster for the tournament, and that stuff is dropping today, which normally, I know we had these World Cup qualifiers that made it confusing as well, but normally you've got your rosters for these tournaments 2 weeks ahead of time, maybe 3 weeks ahead of time. Ecuador is announcing theirs today, and there's a lot of MLS players involved in it. Xavier Arriaga, Diego Palacios, Jackson Mendez, also some other players that we've talked about here on the show a good bit. Moises Caicedo, who's at Brighton, part of this team. It feels like a very first-choice group for Ecuador. Chile is a big one because they were, I think, the first ones, if I remember right, who was announced as, or the rumors were they might not go. They might say, you know what, we're going to skip this thing. It sounds like Brazil is either going to go along with it or they're being pressured into going along with it, which could be either one in that country. This thing is just so crazy. Like, I'd love to see it because I love the Copa America. I love that Fox is on board with broadcasting it in English and making this a big deal. But, yeah, it's hard to get excited about it. I want to be excited because I want to see these teams play. I want to look at this talent, and this young talent especially, and look at like Ecuador, for example, and see who their domestic players are, who it's like, yeah, they could come to MLS. Yeah, they could go to Europe. This is a guy to watch. And it's hard to get excited because we don't even necessarily know if the thing's going to happen on Sunday.
Yeah, man. I honestly, I've had a hard time getting excited about it. Like I said, I love South American soccer. I mean, I love Copa America. It's my favorite time of the year. It really is, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you could ask anybody here. We do huge events, or we used to be for COVID, and we all get together, big screen TV. After every game, there's a huge party. There's salsa even if we lose. And I mean, it's just a good time, right? But because of the social aspect right now and everything that's surrounding it, it's really lowering that expectation and that ability to just get excited for it. And like I said, guys, I wouldn't be surprised if certain players, despite being called up, just would refuse to play or because of whatever reasons. There's already been protests in Colombia after the tie in Argentina, which felt like a win, honestly.
Yeah.
There were protests outside of El Metropolitano, and there were injured citizens, and some were even, I think, fatally hurt. So all those things you're going to continue to see in Copa America. So do you really need to force it? I don't know, guys. I really don't. It's a huge debacle for me internally because I just have mixed feelings on both the social aspect you're very close with and understand it, and then obviously that passion for the game. So it's a difficult time for Copa America.
What about, and I know I'm kind of skipping around here a little bit, but this morning in our first hour, Jason brought up Diego Rossi getting interest from Spurs and Everton. Do you buy it?
Yeah, it's being reported by the Telegraph in London.
I do buy it. I know that he has been in Target or he has been linked to Fiorentina and other teams in Serie A. But I think that after the success that Almiron has had in the Premier League, I think that Diego Rossi is a player that has a lot of those characteristics that can translate well into playing in EPL. And therefore, I do buy it. I feel that LAFC knows how to shop their players as well, and that there would be some sort of ability to get that deal done. I'm not going to say that it's going to happen immediately, but I do believe in those rumors. I've reached out to Diego's representative and have not gotten any confirmation on that end, obviously, but I always do. I make sure that I always ask the questions. That's just the way I run my game. I want to make sure that I'm asking the questions regardless of whether I know the answer or not. So, but I don't doubt it. I think that Diego Rossi is a player that we'll see in Europe very quickly, and Spurs is a team that I wouldn't put past him.
That's an interesting one. I wonder how much he would get into the mix at Spurs. I mean, I guess the biggest thing is who's going to be managing Spurs next year. Same with Everton, two teams that currently don't have managers who are linked to, a significant investment. I mean, we're talking different levels of significance when we talk about English money right now versus like an Italian club or even a Spanish club. But a player that would go for 8 figures. I mean, I don't know what kind of numbers you've heard about Rossi, but it's got to be 10 to 15 million, right?
Yeah, I would say more in the 10 spectrum.
Okay.
10 to 11 is what I would put on a player like Rossi, especially because he has not declined, but he just has not been as amazing this season. And you typically go off that number on the current form of that player. He has not been in the Uruguay national team as a go-to player. He wasn't even called up recently, and that's also part of that money. When you look at transfer money and a player's value, there's a lot that goes into it, and national team value does modify that, whether it's up or down, and Rossi's has not been there. So I think I would put him more in the 10 to 11 million. And knowing his agent and the group that surrounds him, I think that they would be able to shop him to the right team for that amount of money.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see this summer in MLS as we get ready we have one game this weekend with Sporting and Austin before everybody comes back the following weekend. And it's going to get weird with players missing to Copa America, we think, anyway. And, there's going to be quite a few, like in Atlanta. I don't think Venezuela's Copa America squad has been announced, but it's a pretty safe bet that Joseph Martinez is going to be part of it after playing a key role in World Cup qualifiers. And you're going to have a lot of teams missing players. The Gold Cup is going to be another one with players called away, and you're not going to have as big of a break. Depth is going to be critical, but also how teams navigate the upcoming transfer window is going to be critical to set up the second half of this MLS season. Are there any teams that you are particularly watching to see what they do with either incoming or outgoing moves coming up this summer?
Sure. I mean, there's plenty. There's Nashville, who they have a lot going on right now because they have to figure out what they're going to do with their loans. In terms of Cadiz, are they going to keep them? Are they not? I haven't even put this on Twitter, guys, but you guys are a great show. So I'm saying that the information that I'm getting is that Cadiz it looks like they are going to purchase him. They are going to try to. The information that I'm getting from the side of people close to the player is that they feel confident that there will be a buyout clause, and I'm going to put this immediately after I'm done with you guys.
Breaking news from Niko Moreno on Soccer Down Here.
Yeah, I haven't put that out there, but it sounds like those close to the player do believe that is going to get done. So obviously there has been some rumors, and I can confirm those by Tom Bogert, obviously, with Estrada being that player that they're also looking for, the Ecuadorian player that's very good.
I like that pickup.
So, I think it would be great. Obviously, Ecuador is not coming from a very good qualifiers week, but, he did show some of that speed, that explosiveness, and I could see why they're interested in him. So they're one team. Obviously Seattle, I want to know what they're going to do. I can share the guys that I'm following for Seattle, but they're following some very interesting players, and how they're going to use those moves, because right now with their new structure and this 3-5-2, it changes a lot of what they were following maybe 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we know that Sean Henderson, who's Chris Henderson's brother, he has been following players for a very, very long time, and they have this spectrum of players. But now that the formation's changed, there has to have been some sort of modifications. I mean, are they going to go out there and look for another wingback, or are they going to go out there and look for another 9 to maybe replenish Will Bruin? Because Jordan Morris, you don't know how he's going to play this new role. Where are you going to fit Jordan Morris when he comes back? Are you going to go back to a 4-2-3-1? I mean, there's just so many questions that I'm looking forward to really following them in general. Mm-hmm. Another team that's interesting for me, that's going to be perhaps bringing in players or not, it's going to be Austin. We've talked to the coach, and he's kind of said that, they're always looking for new players. They clearly need some help, in my opinion, up top. I think they need a true center forward. I think that's what they've been lacking. We saw how Dominguez played here in Seattle, and you could tell that that's not his position. Dominguez should not be your center forward, and if that is the case, then you're not going to be very effective, in my opinion. He spent more time on the ground than he did, making runs on goal. So honestly, I do believe that there's something they'll be looking for. So there are a couple of teams that I'll be chasing down in this next summer window.
Hey, you mentioned Nashville. People over here in the Eastern Conference are a little worried about what Nashville could be putting together. If Cadiz, I haven't seen enough to say that he's going to be a big player in this league. Estrada, I feel like, could be. And if they get that attack sorted, the last match here with Atlanta and Nashville, Nashville's legit. And we know what they can do defensively. If they are more dangerous in the attack, they're an MLS Cup contender in my book.
Oh, I agree. I'm very high on Nashville, and I have been after their first season. I was skeptical about the way they kind of put the roster together. And then when I saw it play out and I saw what Gary was trying to do on the field and how compact they were and how they were able to just make teams uncomfortable and their ability to kind of play out of the back and be very vertical, very direct. I think that you're right. They have kind of not had that exact same effect this season, maybe because teams maybe were able to know what they were about and they were able to study them a little bit better. There's tape on you now. There's a whole season that we can really see where you're good, where you're not good. So it wasn't as a surprise, but I feel like they have a lot of elements to be very good.
Yeah, they feel like that team to me, Nico, that they know they can defend. They know they can shut it down and lock things up if they need to. And in the postseason, that's a critical element to have. And I almost feel like this year so far, and if they go out and they add Estrada, I think you'll see this even longer. They're testing their limits of how much they can be expansive and not be a team that sits deep and looks to get vertical and play on the counter. They're testing how much can we dictate the play. And when they get Estrada, I think they'll be able to do even more of that. And they could be that team that, honestly, I think Seattle has been for years, where they can do both. They can be that team that drives you insane because they put numbers behind the ball, they sit and defend, they play vertical, and they hurt you that way. Or that team that can actually play and control the game against you and just beat you straight up.
No, I totally agree. And we've talked about this before. We still got to try to see what Piñeros is about.
Yeah.
And what's going on with him. I believe he's also on loan, so maybe if he hasn't really gotten play time, is that going to go away? But they do need a generator of soccer. I think they do need a creative mind out there, and that's it. Maybe something else that they have to look forward. But yeah, no, I think Estrada could do this team a lot of good and give them that edge in the final third that has been lacking, because Nashville creates chances. They do get there. They just are not able to put it away. And Cadiz has also been in and out of the starting lineup, and you don't know who you're going to put him with and how he's going to play. So we'll see. We'll see. I like Cadiz. I think that he's interesting. He shows a lot of potential. I feel like maybe he is lacking a partner or just there's just something not quite there. But I feel like when they figure it out, I think he's going to be very good.
I hope you've had the large cup of coffee this morning, Nico.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, I'm having it right here, and you know what the crazy part is that I'm almost done, and I'm gonna have to just replenish because
perfect timing.
It's been such a good conversation, guys. I love it. I mean, like I said, with you guys, man, I could be here 2 hours, and I have no idea what's going on.
I looked down and I saw that we'd kept you for 45 minutes.
we didn't even get to talk about Colombia, guys. Where Colombia, they were able to pick up that nose diving plane and just kind of they uplifted, and it was great. I got to tell you guys that as a Colombian, man, I am excited that they were able to beat down Peru 3-0, and then against Argentina, a game where they did themselves no favor with how they kind of put together the game plan. But then Reda was smart enough to say, hey, I really messed up on how I put the team together. Let me make some changes in the 27th minute. And they really picked it up and got the tie. So it was a good week for Colombia, guys.
Yeah, I'm an Argentina fan, Nico. Like outside of the U.S., Argentina is always my second team. So I didn't really want to talk about that game, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, I see that. Maybe that's what happened, guys. I thought that's what we were going to start with. You know what I mean? But
no, just move the other way.
It was a great game.
Buried the lead, Nico.
Just move the other direction. Just completely turn that one away. Man,
Colombia is my big winner for CONMEBOL this week, guys. They're the big winner for me. They are the big winner.
Fair enough. Well, I'll let you have that one. We'll see what happens at Copa America and how everything goes. If it gets played, we'll see how the rest of it goes. Next week, we'll be getting right back into the MLS action, and it feels like there's going to be a lot of chatter between now and then as stuff like Rossi pops up, as stuff like Estrada pops up. We'll have plenty to talk about next week, I think, as we get back into an MLS week. Nico, man, thanks for the time, as always. Thanks for getting up early with us and having that large cup of coffee, and we'll talk to you soon.
No, thank you guys. Love talking to you guys. And until you guys get sick of me, I'll continue to be here week by week.
Yeah, if we keep talking about Argentina dropping points to Colombia, we'll have to have that conversation.
Yeah, it'd be like a communications problem. Is this thing on?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. We can't hear Niko. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're sounding like the broadcasters in Argentina that typically call these games, and as soon as that goal came in, it sounded like there was a breakup in the microphone. It was like,
yeah, lost the transmission. Lost the transmission. I have no idea what happened.
All right, my friends, have a good one.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon. Niko Moreno, El Rolo NW on Twitter. Make sure you're following him. Make sure you've got him locked in for all the breaking news, for all the scoops, and all the action out of this hemisphere, covering the game in complete with Sounder at Heart, with Pulso Sports, all the different places that Niko's at. He does a lot of spaces on Twitter as well. So Niko's awesome. Always fun to chat, and especially on weeks like this where it's kind of free form and things can go in a million different directions. It's always fun to talk soccer with Niko. So make sure you're following him, and he's a big part of the SDH family. Anything on Twitter we need to hit before we wrap up, John?
I'm checking quickly and scanning. Of course, I need to get to the
Any final questions from the Twitch pitch as well, please throw them in. We will get to those for about the next 5-10 minutes before we wrap it up for the day, because coming up tonight, we're going to be in Lawrenceville, GA, at Slow Pour Brewing. Big show on hand. We will keep you updated on all the developing news from today, because it feels like there is a lot of that. Yeah. But we'll also see our friends from the Gwinnett Soccer Association, a club that helped produce Walker Zimmerman, among many others, over the years. Learn about everything that they are up to these days. Our friends from Terminus Legion in Gwinnett, their chapter, will be hanging out as well. We will get into it, Coco, tonight. We will get into the favorites for Copa America. We talked about favorites for the Euros. Hopefully we'll have the completed vote.
The Brazilian Supreme Court, that's my favorite.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll finish their vote, and we'll be able to actually talk about a tournament starting on Sunday. So, yeah, we'll dig into that, Coco. Brazil's obviously the favorite because they're going to be hosting the thing, and they are stacked. But we'll get into who else could be the surprise. Argentina's there, but who else could be those teams to watch? Maybe it's Colombia. Maybe Niko will be very happy about our show from tonight. We'll have to see how that goes. But we'll dig into Copa America tonight. We'll dig into looking ahead to what's up with MLS and getting ready for the return of action and what lineups could look like for Atlanta United over the next month, honestly, 4 to 6 weeks with a Gold Cup as well. We'll get into players to keep an eye on that could be playing more significant roles than they have in the past.
Couple from Tafka to catch us up. Tafka is calling for a Super Copa Americas to become a once every cycle tournament. Mm-hmm. Let South America do a CONMEBOL Copa America year 1, year 3, a 16-team tournament in the year before the World Cup that would include Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, Peru.
All of South America. What?
Yeah, it's like, well, Uruguay, Venezuela, the U.S., Mexico, Canada, Costa Rica, Honduras, and Jamaica.
I'm not going to limit it on the CONCACAF side. I mean, you're basically talking Copa America Centenario that was done, and you had 6 teams from CONCACAF qualify to play in it. So if you do 16, if you do further than that and have more CONCACAF teams, that's fine. All the 10 South American teams would be part of it because CONMEBOL will hold the cards on that. But I like the format of what they did with that. So if Copa America is going to be every 2 years, if the Gold Cup is going to be every 2 years, fine. Do the combined tournament the same summer as the Euros to where you get into it. Because I think, there was talk, a little bit different topic, but follow me here for a second. So when the NWSL made their announcement about San Diego, same day as the USL made their announcement about the W League, I saw people like sniping back and forth like, oh, they're trying to steal the thunder. These guys are making an announcement over here, and they're trying to say, hey, look over here. I think that's actually a good thing. So, because you're talking about women's soccer, so people are talking about both. Same thing goes with this. If you get into a situation where every 4 years, the 2 years between World Cups, you are having the Euros early in the day in this hemisphere and the combined CONCACAF CONMEBOL tournament later in the day in this hemisphere, that's a good thing for soccer in this hemisphere. Like, people are going to watch both. People are going to be consuming both. People are going to be talking about both. And then how, we saw this player with Hungary. Man, maybe Sporting Kansas City should go sign this player. Cool. Or Daniel Shalhoub. Look at what he's doing over there. That's our guy. And then look at what our other guy's doing playing for Ecuador in the combined tournament in the evening. It just is more content, more talk, more conversation. It's good. So I think they should do it that way. Not the year before the World Cup. That's going to be more of a Gold Cup Copa America summer. And potentially if they do things, I think the way they're planning on, that'll be a playoff summer for teams as well to get into the next World Cup. Fine. Do it in the years of the Euros. So every 4 years do the combined CONCACAF CONMEBOL tournament to where it is, and this is good for Europe too because they'll have their games and then late night they'll have this combined tournament to be able to watch. They'll be on board. But do that in those years where that is a summer festival of soccer where it's an all-day thing of a 9, a 12, a 3 out of Europe and a 6, an 8, and a 10 out of this continent and this hemisphere. It'd be amazing. I'm all in.
I'm all in.
I won't be able to do anything else during that summer, but I'm all in. I'll watch a lot of it.
Summer of soccer.
Sure. We'll just be on Twitch nonstop.
There you go. And the other comment from Tafka had to do with Celtic and their managerial choice once it was announced. Mm-hmm. Tafka was kind of wondering if Celtic had thought about guys like Bob Bradley or Jim Curtin. Did they even cross your mind?
Probably not. Look, there's a bias. I mean, it's real. Bob Bradley's talked about it. Others have talked about it. Our resident Aberdeen fan, Ram, coming in, had to laugh at Celtic, new manager. Yep, we were talking about that. We were giving Jarrett the business a little bit in hour number 1, Ram. It's better than a retread, I guess. But yeah, like how far out of the, box did they have to go on this? Could they have went instead of going to somebody who's had their success in Asia? Could they have gone to a Bob Bradley or a Jim Curtin or somebody who has had their success on this side of the Atlantic? Would that have been a better fit? Smart clubs are going to start considering it more because there's no reason why they shouldn't. There are good young managers in this hemisphere, and they're not all in the U.S. They can be in South America too, that can, go and adapt to the Scottish game or the English game or wherever in Europe. It can happen. I don't know if Bob Bradley or Jim Curtin would have been better than Postecoglou. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but they should have been in the consideration if that's how far outside the box Celtic was going. They should have been in that mix, and it doesn't sound like they were. There was some talk about Jesse Marsch, but people look at him now as a European manager. So, it is what it is. D. Graham, absolutely correct. People laughed at Arsenal when they signed Arsene Wenger from Japan. They did. And that worked out really well for Arsenal for a long time. It can work. But it can also work for somebody to laugh at bringing in the U.S. manager and, hey, not being Swansea and basically misleading the guy and saying, oh, yeah, get to the window. We'll give you the investment to be able to adapt and build the squad. No, they didn't do that. So he was building for nothing.
Bob Bradley got screwed.
Yes. Good job, Swansea. It can work on this side too, so I hope that it would. Ram said he had to cry when he saw Scott Brown in an Aberdeen top. I think a lot of Celtic fans cried when they saw that as well. Jarrett's still not used to seeing him wearing red. I'm excited to see what everything looks like. We were talking about it yesterday. For Stephen Glass, this is the first time really in his career that he's had a full preseason to build with a first team. Because building in a preseason situation with a second team is a whole different situation. And he did that in 2019 and 20, where, you have a core of guys you're building around, but then you're going to have first team guys drop in and you're going to have academy guys step up. And you have a small core and you're planning to basically adapt on the fly. Now he's getting to build what he wants. And Scott Brown's going to be a part of that. Other guys that they've already brought in are going to be a part of that. They're they're in the market. The links with Christian Ramirez here in MLS are strong. Sounds like Jack Gurr is heading in that direction as well. Like, he gets to build from day one. I can't wait to see what his team looks like, because something that we talked about during his time with the first team here in Atlanta, and it was during the COVID time, and it was weird, and you had no training, and the schedule was compressed, and it was just bonkers. And then going to Aberdeen, I mean, it was also kind of bonkers when he got there. He didn't have a forward, it felt like. He didn't have anybody who could put the ball in the back of the net. Like, now, even in those situations, with it being as weird as it was, we would see it happen inconsistently, I think, because of the situation. But we did see teams take on his personality that we saw shine through with the second team a good bit when he had a consistent group for a period of games. Now he's going to get to do that from day one. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited to see what Aberdeen looks like. And, we'll see if Celtic figures out what they're going to do this year and what their rebuild looks like, because they've got a lot of things to do. And the manager is going to be part of that. And is he going to adapt? Because who knows? Maybe Scotland could be a little more wide open than we think.
Yeah, and with David Wagner heading to Young Boys, he now gets to coach Jordan Pefok.
Yes, great transition, John.
I was going in the timeline with Dead again. Side note: Wagner announced his Young Boys coach, and so I'm like, okay, Jordan Pefok in there too.
I forgot you just read things from the Twitch timeline and don't actually set them up or anything. So Domer, don't get him in trouble again.
Yeah, Domer, don't do that.
Yes, thank you, Dead again.
Or if you're gonna tell me.
No, don't. Just don't get him in trouble, because he just reads things without any kind of setup. So, yes, Domer, don't do it. One of the other managers that has been out there that we thought was going to be at West Brom, because that had been talked about as basically a done deal yesterday, not happening. David Wagner is not going to West Brom. He is going to Young Boys instead. And it sounds like, one, he wanted to be a little bit closer to his family in Germany. He was at Schalke last. So now West Brom in the championship is going to have to go look for a manager. And I don't know who that's going to be now. They are further down that ladder of teams that do have an open chair in the dugout.
Big Sam might send the resume back.
No, he's not. He doesn't want to do that. Do you think he wants to go and be in the championship and that slog? No, he'll wait and see who.
He'll send. I bet he's already sent his CV to both Everton and Spurs.
No, he hasn't. He doesn't want to deal with that. Sam Allardyce is going to do what he's done for the last decade. I mean, he basically said it after his time at West Brom. He's a fixer now. He doesn't want to go and do a whole year anywhere. He'll wait and see, because there will be somebody, probably multiple somebodies, who are in a bad spot and fire their manager in the Christmas time. And they're going to ask him, even though he wasn't able to save West Brom, they're going to say, hey, come in and save us. And he'll take a job for a short period of time, and then he'll move on. That's what he'll do. And look, it's not a bad place to be. I'm sure he gets paid handsomely for it.
Yes, no doubt.
And that's what he's going to do. He doesn't want the slog of the championship for sure. And I don't think he wants to be in a situation like Everton or Spurs, which there's a lot of questions. Both of those jobs have a lot of questions hanging over them. We went through it with Spurs, and Antonio Conte's like, yeah, no thanks. Because there's not really a great guarantee of success. There's not even a guarantee of Europa League coming out of that. Because are you going to get the resources to compete? You're not going to get them to compete with Manchester City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. Probably not with Manchester United. Are you going to get the resources to compete to be fifth? For sure. Probably not. So then what? Is that the job you want? Probably not. So who are they going to get? I don't know. Those are the two that I feel like what you're looking at now is Spurs and Everton looking below them in the table for somebody that they think can grow into a bigger manager while at that club. So somebody like Potter, who it's, okay, bring him in. You can shake your head all you want, John, but he's probably the best guy from a lower division spot, not lower division, lower table spot, that could become more with more resources to work with. Again, you can shake your head, but that's where Spurs and Everton are. They don't have another. Stop. They don't have another option. You can not like it, but literally, what else are they going to do? Because this is who they are now. This is who Spurs and Everton are. They can't get a top guy because a top guy looks at that and says, I can't compete with the big three, let alone the rest of the big six, and throw Leicester into the mix. I've got no guarantee to be successful here. So no, I'm out. Top guys are going to say no. You're going to have to get somebody who is at a smaller club with fewer resources, who you're going to have to bet on them doing more with the resources that you're giving them. Scott Parker, yes, Domer, he's in this type of list. Like, that's who you're talking about at those clubs now, because they can't convince a top guy to take the job. They just can't. So Potter is absolutely in that mix because Potter has shown he's a good coach. I mean, he's a guy who, yeah, he could be in a better position than Brighton. Absolutely, he could be in a better club than that, a bigger club than that. Is he going to be expected to win the Europa League at a Everton or Spurs? He shouldn't be. You know, maybe they would put that expectation on him, then they're setting everything up to fail. They need to hire somebody like that and say, look, we're going to give you 3 years. We're betting on you to grow with you. We're going to grow the resources we're going to give you. You're not going to compete with Chelsea straight away in the transfer market. Maybe in 3 years, we can do what Leicester did over a period of time. And we're betting on you to be that guy. I have a feeling they won't do that based off past history, especially at Spurs. They will hire somebody like that and say, go get us trophies now, and they won't give them the resources to do it, and then they'll fire him, and you're screwed.
All I'm going to say about Graham Potter is 2 words. Moises Caicedo.
So he's a bum because of one player, he's a bum? That's incredibly harsh and short-sighted.
If you make this investment...
Did he make it?
Okay, if the team, let's put it, all right, so
yeah.
I will rephrase. Okay. If the team makes an investment about a player that is of the capabilities of a Moises Caicedo, with everything that we've seen with him in this hemisphere, the team makes this kind of an investment to bring that kind of a player to an offensively challenged group.
He's not an offensive. No, Moises Caicedo is not a big goal scorer, John.
I think that he could help the process along to at least have them score more than they currently are. And I know that's a bit of a low bar, yeah. But if you bring in a player, the talent of a Moises Caicedo, yet you don't integrate him into your side, and you've made this investment in him to what you've done, it just, for me, one player like this, okay, I'm looking at it not as a trend, but if you continue to bring in players and don't use them, then for me it's a trend, and it's a worrisome trend. It's like, is this a concern where if the team that you're with brings in a player and then your team invests all this money and you don't put him out there when I think he could be of a help? To me, it's a bit of it's a flag. Does this kind of a thing continue?
John, you're trying to make a cake out of 2 eggs. Like, there's not enough to go on there. Is it a question? Sure, and we've talked about it. I thought Moises Caicedo could have walked into Brighton and played day one. Brighton was also in and around a relegation scrap for part of that, which I understand not integrating new players at that time. I think they could have towards the end. But they're also in a situation where one of the players in Moises Caicedo's position is probably going to be sold now in the summer. And that's going to open up the spot. If this continues, then yeah, I have a massive issue with Potter and what he's doing. If he's there next year, which he might not be. But to say that I question this person, the ability to be able to coach, based off not integrating a player who came in at the very end of the transfer window during COVID times and didn't play in a, 3-month span after arriving at the club. One player at that situation while you're somewhat dealing with relegation scrap, that is making a lot out of something small to say that I question this manager's ability to be a coach, to be a good coach. That feels way overblown. I know we jump on causes sometimes. Like Moises Caicedo is a great player who should be playing anywhere in the world, and I think South American players should be rated higher by English managers. I think it's not even a Graham Potter thing. I mean, Alan Pardew didn't even know who Javier Mascherano was at West Ham and didn't play him. That's a cultural thing. But it's also doesn't mean that Potter is a bad manager. I think that is a line you're drawing way too far. I know, David, I did try to make a cooking reference to make things more clear to John. I know that's a questionable choice. It was the first thing that came to mind. But you can't use that to say that Potter shouldn't get an opportunity to move up.
I'd like to see what he can do with more resources.
I would
is
too,
he the same kind of a guy? Is he the same kind of a coach who will be more defensive oriented if he has more resources? Or
I don't think he's necessarily defensively oriented. I didn't think he had much of an attack, but I don't think it's because he doesn't want to attack. I don't know. I don't get that sense from Brighton. I think most people feel like Brighton and Potter are promising. I think they feel like he can be a promising young manager. I don't know where your negativity towards Brighton came, because it was before Caicedo even got there. I don't know where it comes from. I don't get it. But no, you're not on the same page with a lot of people on Potter. He might fail. I think that has to be understood here. We're talking about going from the team that finished 16th to the team that finished 7th or 10th. There's a different level of expectation. He might not be able to meet that. It's more of a symbol of where Tottenham and Everton are right now, in that that's who they have to turn to, because they can't get an Antonio Conte to come in and take that job. Everton was able to get Carlo Ancelotti. I don't know if they'll be able to pull something like that off again. There's not any of those guys out there. The biggest wild card of a name that they could really get, don't even say Zinedine Zidane, Yogi Löw. Yogi Löw would be a wild card that maybe they could convince, because he doesn't have a track record in the last 2 decades at the club level. Okay. Maybe that's who they could get, and that would be worth the risk for them. Absolutely. I mean, he brings a World Cup winners medal to the club. That's a big deal. But outside of that, who are you looking at? You're not going to poach anybody from the teams ahead of you. You're not going to poach Arteta or Bielsa. You're not going to poach a David Moyes. You're not going to go get Villa's manager. You don't want Steve Bruce. Nuno's already gone from Wolves. It sounds like you don't want Nuno, which there's baggage there, so I get it. You're not going to go sign Roy Hodgson, who left Palace. You're going to go get Hasenhüttl? Okay, that's one that I could buy into. All right, somebody who has had some horrific results from time to time, but has also tried to play, and most people feel positive about. The next one is Potter. Like, that's it. That's who you're looking at, because you can't say that you're going to go sign Scotty Parker over Potter.
No. You
can't sell me on that. You can sell me on Hasenhüttl ahead of Potter. I can buy that. But that's 2 clubs. They got 2 spots to fill. So, I mean, Potter is right there in that mix, and he should be, because there's not a lot. Now, Coco says Jim Curtin. This is where that conversation comes up. If this is what you're looking at in England, in the league you're in, and it's like, okay, I could go to Scotty Parker, I could go to Graham Potter, I could go to Hasenhüttl. Do any of them make me better? Do any of them change what I have? Can any of them coach up what I have? Because I'm going to need somebody to coach my guys up. I'm not going to be able to go just sign guys like Chelsea and Manchester City. I need somebody to coach people up. Do those guys do that? Questionable. It's questionable. Then is it, and Nick has mentioned Ralph Rangnick multiple times, they're not going to do that because Ralph's a little bit of a prickly figure and they don't want to do that. Okay, fine. Well, then what? If you don't want to go with a Potter or a Hasenhüttl or a Parker, and you don't want to go with somebody who is maybe more of a visionary and a difficult figure in a Ralph Rangnick, then you have to look outside.
Yeah, you got to go off the board.
Then you could look at other countries, but it doesn't feel like in Europe there's anybody out there that is the obvious pick. Then maybe you need to look in this hemisphere. And yes, Jim Curtin is somebody who has a play style and a philosophy and a ideal that is very modern in what a lot of teams are doing with that pressing element. Now, he does it right now out of a 4-4-2 diamond, but he's showing more flexibility. Sometimes the diamond becomes a box. Sometimes it's 4-2-2-2. He has played 4-2-3-1. Jim Curtin's a guy that, in my opinion, is destined to coach in Europe at some point. I don't know if Bob Bradley gets that opportunity again, and I don't know if he is honestly all that different in terms of coaching a group up than a Potter or a Parker or a Hasenhüttl would be. Curtin feels like a guy who can get a lot out of less. I think he has that kind of mentality, and he's shown it with a club that's developed young talent. Jim Curtin feels like one of those guys. Marcelo Gallardo, obviously, could feel like one of those guys. I think Hernan Crespo is a name that is known and is a big name and is showing he's got the chops as a manager, winning a Copa Sudamericana with Defensa, now at Sao Paulo. That would be maybe a little bit bigger risk for Tottenham or Everton, possibly, than signing a Potter or a Hasenhüttl or a Parker. But I feel like the reward is a lot higher because as much as I'm defending Graham Potter here, like, is he going to go to Tottenham or Everton and walk in and do the Leicester with them? Because, sorry, Tottenham, like that's what you're needing to do now. You're needing to do what a club like Leicester has done, where they have punched above their weight and established themselves as a top team. I don't know if any of them go in and do that. I don't have any real strong feeling that they do. You could hire the best manager and they might go in and fail in that because that's not easy to do. But I don't know if Potter's that guy. I just think that is where Tottenham and Everton are right now. It is seriously Hasenhüttl and Potter of guys in their league that they could go get that would make any sense to hire at this moment.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you with that. And I think that what we've seen with someone like Hasenhüttl is that when your leading scorer is healthy in Danny Ings, and that was like this with Ings, is that when everything is working and you have all the pieces, we've seen what Southampton can be. But
what can they be?
Southampton could be that 10th place team.
Okay.
Then if you give him a Spurs situation where in theory he may have more resources over X amount of period of time, how much more, this is going to be very, very goodly English, how much more better could he be at a Spurs?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the answer. I honestly don't know if, okay, he could get to 10th with Danny Ings. And look, Southampton getting to 10th is an accomplishment. Don't get me wrong. But if you give him a team like Spurs with the attacking talent that they have, if they keep him, could he get them above 7th? Because that's where they finished. Could he get them above that? I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know if he could, if Potter could, if I don't know who could. I think a lot of it comes down to what Antonio Conte said. They've got to sell somebody on the vision and what they're going to do to get a manager who can achieve it. Otherwise, they're going to get a safe choice. Potter's the safest choice, in my opinion. Hasenhüttl is a little more of a maybe bigger reward, but maybe bigger risk.
Yeah.
I mean, Southampton gave up 68 goals last year.
Yeah.
Like let's be real.
Yeah, when they were bad, they were very bad.
Yeah, I mean they gave up more goals than everybody but West Brom last year in the Premier League. That's the problem. Potter didn't have much of an attack, but his team only gave up 46 goals. Out of all the teams in the bottom half of the table, that's the best, along with Aston Villa, who was 11th. That's the safer choice. If you want to grind out getting into a Europa League, and look, that's what Tottenham and Everton have to be talking about, right? Is getting into Europa League.
Yep.
Potter's the safer choice, not sexy choice, and I don't know what the reward could be for him. Hasenhüttl feels a little riskier. Maybe it pays off, but I think they've got to convince somebody to take the job. Potter or Hasenhüttl would, because it's a step up from Southampton or Brighton.
Agreed.
That you don't need as much convincing. Curtin would need to be convinced to jump into that because it's risky for him. He's in a good situation right now, and he'll get an opportunity in Europe when that time is right. You'd absolutely have to convince a Marcelo Gallardo, Hernan Crespo, Sebastian Becasese. I mean, we could go through the list of managers in Europe or in South America who could maybe make that jump over to Europe. You'd have to really convince them. I don't know if Tottenham or Everton can do that convincing. So I think they're stuck with a Potter or a Hasenhüttl. I think those are the two. And then you've got two clubs further down the ladder that are going to have to go out and hire somebody, and this is what you're doing. This is where you're at. You know, the musical chairs game gets really difficult when you get down to the last couple of chairs and the last couple of players. And that's what it feels like Everton and Tottenham are in right now.
Exactly.
It's not exciting about who they could get. Potter's safe. Like, he's not going to run Tottenham or Everton off the road. Like, he's not going to, like, break them and throw them into a relegation scrap. But can he elevate them? It's almost like you have to wait and see if he gets the job. Same with Hasenhüttl. Hasenhüttl might break him. Like, that one worries me a little bit. Is he might get them into that fourth, fifth conversation, possibly, because we've seen some really nice highs out of Southampton, but he also might have them give up 70 goals.
Yes.
And that's scary. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll keep you posted on the rumors. Tottenham hasn't had a manager for a while. We'll see if they ever find one. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for all the back and forth. Thanks for Niko Moreno joining us. Thanks for those of you who are going to try to make it out to Slow Pour Brewing tonight. Show starts at 6. It will be streamed on Twitch. We'll be there starting about 5 o'clock. There are some great specials. Gwinnett Soccer Association will be there hanging out with us. Terminus Legion in Gwinnett, their chapter, will be hanging out with us. So if you are in the vicinity, please come out and join us. Slow Pour Brewing, make sure you're following them at Slow Pour Brewing on all the social media channels. We'll be back at 6. We'll talk Copa America, we'll talk Atlanta United, and more. Mucha plata, y'all.
Much fun.